CD 7. The Batesons agreed to close the store immediately, the remaining stock to be sold at the reduced price when the shop reopened. New stock would need to be ordered, and Thomas introduced them to the wholesalers they had used. Sam and Colin, however, intended to make certain changes, concentrating maybe on fewer sports with a different range of goods. A notice appeared in the window of the store: "Closed for business, reopening shortly under new management." They decided tentatively on early August, which would give them a couple of months to ensure that everything was ready. And, of course, time to find new homes in Harrogate. Val and Sam tried whenever possible to leave the children behind, usually with Val's parents, to give them a chance to concentrate more fully on the task in hand. The news gradually became known, via the grapevine, that Sam and Val were leaving for pastures new, and that Sam would no longer be working for the family firm. Val had made a point of telling Sissy before she heard from someone else. As Val had expected, her friend was sorry and rather disgruntled at the news. They had been friends for such a long time, and although they didn't see one another quite as often now, Val's departure would leave a big gap in her life. "I won't half miss you," she moaned. "Who will I be able to tell my troubles to? You've always been there to listen to me." "Well, we'll be able to phone one another," said Val. "But I'm hoping you won't have any troubles. You're not in trouble now, are you?" "No, of course not. But you never know. And you'll be near to Janice, won't you, not to me? Do you want to get a house round there near to the Stray? I wish Walter and me could move somewhere a bit posher. I'd like a bigger garden and more room for the kids to play in." Sissy was somewhat mollified, however, when Joshua Walker spoke to Walter, telling him that when Sam had gone, he intended to give him more responsibility. Sam had been in charge of personnel, dealing with any complaints that might arise with the workforce. These, fortunately, were very few. Joshua felt that Walter could be relied on to be as diplomatic as Sam had been. The young man had changed since his marriage to Sissy, becoming more likeable and less aloof in his manner. After a couple of weekends of house hunting, Val and Sam found one that they both thought would be ideal. The house was in an avenue close to the Stray, and therefore quite close to Janice and Phil. In many respects, it was similar to the 3-bedroom semi they were leaving. They needed to sell their own house, however, before anything could be settled with the new property. They had had a few inquiries, and a few couples had viewed the house, but there was no deal so far. On the following Monday morning, Walter approached Sam while they were at work. "Is your house still for sale?" he asked. "Or have you found a buyer?" "No, I'm afraid we haven't," Sam replied. "There's been a few inquiries, but no takers. We can't understand it. It's what the estate agents call a desirable residence. Why? Do you know someone who might be interested?" "Yes, I do. It's me. That is to say, it's Sissy and me." Sam was surprised, but tried not to show his feelings. After all, why shouldn't Walter be interested? He suspected, though, that Sissy might have had a lot to do with it. "We'd like more room," Walter went on. "We're rather cramped now the kids are getting older, and I've decided we're in a position to make you an offer. Thanks to your father, of course. The extra pay will make all the difference. And I've been careful with my brass over the years. So, what do you think?" "I think that's great," said Sam. He didn't want to embarrass or patronize Walter by asking if he was sure he could afford it. He knew that Walter was astute and would have done his sums. "You'll need to see our estate agent, and I'm sure that together we'll be able to come to an agreement. Good for you, Walter. Val will be pleased when I tell her." Walter did not say that Sissy had been pestering him and trying to persuade him that they could afford it. Sissy had tried not to be envious of her friend, who lived in the more salubrious suburb of Queensbury. But she could not help feeling, deep down, somewhat peeved that Val had always been a step or two higher on the social ladder. They had little difficulty in finding a buyer for their rather more modest house. Very soon plans were being made for their move to the Walkers' residence, which was to coincide with Val and Sam's move to Harrogate. Cissy felt pleased with herself and a trifle smug. She had started off as a mill girl and had then been promoted to the birling and mending room, but had still been regarded as a mill girl. Now her husband was shortly to become one of the bosses at Walker's Mill, or so she saw it, and they would live in the affluent district of Queensbury. Chapter 17. "Ian says he'd like to come and work for us again this summer," said Janice to her husband. It was an evening in July, and she had phoned her brother, quite expecting him to say that he would be staying in Blackpool and working at one of the promenade hotels in what would be their busiest time of the year. "I'm pleased to hear that, but rather surprised," said Phil. "I thought he had other interests in Blackpool as well as work. He seemed to be getting rather keen on that girl Alison. Did he say anything about her?" "I didn't ask. I didn't mention her name at all. I just said we would be pleased to have him here if he hadn't made other plans. I sort of hinted that there might be other attractions for him in Blackpool, but he was very cagey about it. 'Not any more,' he said, so I didn't inquire further. I said we'd look forward to seeing him again." "And when will that be?" "The end of July, soon after he finishes at college, just in time for the August bank holiday weekend. Not that that will make much difference to our business here. In fact, a lot of the local people may be away on holiday." The clientele consisted mainly of local people, many of whom had come out of curiosity to see how Grundy's was faring with its new names. And having come once, they came again, and told their friends how much they liked the changes that had been made. The menu at the present time consisted of a good selection of light summery meals that no longer needed to be ordered in advance. The service was prompt and friendly, as it had always been, and there was a happy ambience to the place. Although some local people would be away on holiday, there were others from different parts of the country who visited Harrogate as a holiday resort. It had once been a famous spa town, but was still popular for its pleasant surroundings, its nearness to the Yorkshire Dales, the moors, and the ancient city of York. Changing Seasons was well advertised, and visitors to the town, especially those staying at guest houses that provided only bed and breakfast, found it an ideal place for an evening meal. The food was appetizing, and most importantly, not too expensive. Phil had decided at the outset to charge prices that were within the budget of most people and would encourage them to come again. The morning following Ian's phone call, Sophie called at Grundy's just before the coffee pot was due to open for its early customers. Janice was pleased to see her and rather hoped that she might be offering her services for the month of August. She was not disappointed. "I was wondering if I could come and help out here again," she asked. "I shall understand if you're fully staffed, but I enjoy working here. That's not the only reason I've come, though. I wanted to see you and to wish you well with your new venture. Mum told me you're doing splendidly. She and Graham have had an evening meal here, and she sometimes pops in for coffee." "Yes, so she does," said Janice. "And of course, we'd be delighted if you can come and work for us again. We have a few part-time students from the school, like you used to be, but there's certainly room for one more, especially somebody who knows the ropes like you do." Janice hesitated before she went on to say, "Ian will be working here as well. I phoned him last night, and he said he'd be pleased to come again. Does that make any difference to your plans?" "No, why should it?" said Sophie. "Ian and I parted on friendly terms, and I'll be pleased to see him again. Actually, I'm no longer seeing the young man I was friendly with at college, but that doesn't really matter. I know Ian has a girlfriend in Blackpool, But there's no reason why we can't work together amicably. He'll be in the kitchen most of the time, won't he? And working mainly in the evenings.
Phil hasn't decided yet exactly what he wants Ian to do.
Janice didn't say that there was no longer a girlfriend. Ian hadn't said that in so many words, but that was what she had surmised from his caginess. Janice thought it best to keep out of it and let Ian and Sophie sort it out for themselves.
"So, when would you like to start, Sophie?" she asked. "You can come as soon as you like, but I expect you'll want some time at home first."
"Yes, that's right. I need a little time to recuperate after my teaching practice and exams. And I want to spend some time with Mum. We'd like to go shopping together. We thought we'd go to York for a day, as though we're tourists." She laughed. "It's been ages since either of us was there, and there's so much to see. You don't really appreciate places as you should, do you, when they're almost on your doorstep?"
"That's true," agreed Janice. "Of course, Yorkshire was all new to me till I married Phil, and I was surprised at the variety of the scenery. The dales and the moors, and the quaint villages and seaside towns. We don't have much time now, though, to go touring around."
"And I've some school friends I want to catch up with," Sophie went on. "Gail and Dawn are at different colleges, and Jean's doing a nursing course. We'll all get together and have a natter. So, what about a fortnight from now? Would that be okay?"
"That's fine, Sophie. And would it be for about 6 weeks or so?"
"Yes, thereabouts. Maybe a little longer if you still need me. We don't go back until nearly the end of September."
"And that will be your last year, will it?"
"Oh no, it's a 3-year course now. It used to be 2, but they changed it in 1960. So I just missed out on that. It seems a long time, but no doubt it will pass quickly. We're kept very busy. Ian's course is 2 years, isn't it?"
"Yes, he has 1 more year to do, but Phil thinks he's pretty competent already."
"Well, he learnt a lot from you and Phil, didn't he?"
"I suppose he did, particularly from Phil, of course. That was what made him decide he would like to be a chef. He had never considered it until he started seeing Phil at work."
"I better leave you to get on now," said Sophie, glancing at her watch. "It's getting on for opening time."
"Yes, so it is, but I doubt there'll be a rush just yet, especially on a Monday morning. So, shall we say a fortnight today? We'll sort out your hours together, you and me. I know you won't want to work full-time."
"Great," said Sophie. "Thanks ever so much, Janice. I'll look forward to it. Bye for now."
Sophie was settled into her routine at Grundy's by the time Ian arrived. He would be employed mainly in the Changing Seasons restaurant, assisting with the preparation of the meals and then waiting at the tables. Sophie was simply a waitress, helping in the coffee pot, which was open for morning coffee, snack lunches, and afternoon tea. All in all, it was a busy establishment, but with ample staff so that no one was overworked. Ian and Sophie met again when he arrived on a Friday afternoon near the end of July. Phil had met him at the station, following his rail journey from Blackpool. The cafe was closing following the afternoon tea session, and Sophie was just removing her apron before walking back home. "Hello, Sophie."
"Hello, Ian."
Their greeting was a little restrained, neither of them making a move towards the other.
"Good journey?" she asked.
"Yes, not bad. Changed at Leeds, and the station there was crowded. Holiday time, of course. I had to stand part of the way on the first train. Anyway, how are you?"
"Very well, thanks. Just recovering after a busy term, as no doubt you are."
They looked at one another uncertainly. It was Sophie who broke the ice. Janice had tactfully left the room, leaving them on their own.
"Look, Ian, we'll be seeing one another here from time to time. It's unavoidable. And anyway, I don't want to avoid you.
I know you've got a girlfriend in Blackpool, but we decided, didn't we, that we could still be friends?"
"I haven't. Not now," said Ian briefly.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry to hear that," although Sophie was not sorry at all.
"Don't be. I'm not. What about you? Are you still friendly with the fellow you met at college?"
She shook her head. "No, we called it a day. At least, I did."
"Oh, I see."
They were still regarding one another intently. Then Sophie laughed, and so did Ian. "This is daft, isn't it?" she said. "Shall we get together and have a chat? That is, if you'd like to. Just as friends, I mean."
"Yes, of course. I'd like that. I'll walk back home with you now, shall I?"
"No, you've only just arrived. You must be weary after your journey, and you'll want to unpack and have a chat with Janice and Phil. I'll be busy tomorrow. Saturdays are always busy here."
"What about Sunday, then?" suggested Ian. "We could go for a stroll on Sunday afternoon, perhaps."
Grundy's were still keeping to their policy of closing on a Sunday. Gradually, more and more places were opening on what used to be called the Sabbath day. Times were changing, and so was the outlook of many people regarding Sundays. Some still adhered to the religious principle of not working on a Sunday. Janice and Phil had decided to close because Sunday was their only free day, a day in which they could spend precious time with their little daughter, or visit Phil's parents, or just enjoy one another's company. Phil and Ian discussed Ian's timetable for the coming weeks, over the next 2 days, a flexible one according to whether the restaurant was busy or not.
"And you will want some evenings off," said Phil, "if you want to go out to the cinema or whatever."
Phil did not mention Sophie, although he had heard from Janice that both the teenagers appeared to be fancy-free again. Ian didn't mention her either. He nodded and gave a wry grin.
"We'll have to see how it goes. How is Changing Seasons going on? You've been open for about 7 or 8 weeks now, haven't you?"
"Yes, that's right," replied Phil.
"It's early days, and we can't grumble. As a matter of fact, we're quite pleased, but we can't afford to be complacent. Some folk will have come to give us a try because it's somewhere new, but it's encouraging when we see familiar faces appearing again. Our regulars have been faithful to us, and they like being able to choose from the menu when they arrive and not have to book the meal in advance." "Do you find there's a lot of wastage with the new system?"
"No, it's working out quite well. We don't keep a huge amount in stock, especially the perishable items like fruit and veg. We have a good supplier who comes regularly. We still take bookings in advance as we did before, if it's for a special occasion, say a birthday or anniversary, and then we do like them to choose the menu. There hasn't been an evening so far when we haven't had any customers. Sometimes there may be only 6 or 8. Other times, especially Fridays and Saturdays, we might be almost full. They don't all come at once, of course. We're open from 7 o'clock, and we take the last orders at 8:30. We're usually finished by 10:30.
"And are there just you and Toby doing the cooking and preparation? You must be working flat out."
"We have an assistant now, Jason. He's 16 and just left school. He's not had any experience or training, but he's keen to learn, so I suggested he might go to college a couple of days a week. At the moment, he's preparing the veg and clearing up, doing the donkey work, I suppose, but he seems to like the environment. And we'll have you starting on Monday. That will make things easier."
"I hope so," said Ian. "I want to earn my keep." "Don't worry, I shall make sure you do that," said Phil, grinning at him. "And then there's the lunchtime snacks. You could help out there if needed. But we're never too busy midday. We have a couple of part-time women who help out there. So, all in all, I believe we're coping pretty well."
Ian phoned Sophie, and they agreed to meet and go for a walk on Sunday afternoon. "I'll meet you outside Grundy's at 2:00, she said. "There's no need for you to come out of your way to meet me. It's only a few minutes' walk." She arrived almost on the dot, as Ian was coming out of the door. They both smiled, as though they were very pleased to see one another again. Ian felt happiness bubbling up inside him, and realised how much he had missed her. For a while he had been contented with Alison. At least he had convinced himself that he was growing fond of her and that they were good together, until things started to go wrong. He stole a sideways glance at Sophie as they strolled along the pathway through the Stray, thinking what an attractive girl she was, not only pretty, but with a lovely personality as well. She had a freshness and an honesty about her, which was very appealing, and he had always known that he could trust her. She was not what you would call worldly wise, but neither was she naive. She and Alison were very different, both in looks and in personality. Ian had felt from the start, deep down, that he could not entirely trust Alison, and this had proved to be so. She had appeared mature and sophisticated, but that was largely a veneer. Underneath she was in fact insecure, and hid behind the facade of a devil-may-care attitude. Sophie looked most attractive today, in a bright pink dress with polka dot spots, which Ian thought was now called a shift dress. Her dark hair curled gently around her face. She wore very little makeup, apart from a touch of coral lipstick, and she sported a healthy tan. She glanced back at Ian and smiled. "Penny for them?" she said. "Or have I got a smut on my nose?" "No, sorry," he said. "I was just thinking that you've caught the sun. You're very brown, but nicely so. You look very nice." "We made the most of the sun the last week of term, when exams had finished. We played quite a lot of tennis, and I've been playing with my old school friends since I came home. I've not been sitting out in it. I was never one for lounging in the sun." "Yes, I remember that you played tennis. You told me that you were in the school team." "The second team. I was only a reserve for the first team." "Very good, though. Tennis is a sport I never learnt. We played cricket at school, which was okay, but I had no experience of tennis. It was football, of course, that was my passion, although we had to play rugby at school." "Yes, I know you were a football fanatic. You still are, I suppose." "Yes, I have a kick around with the mates I had at school when we can get together. There's no time for sports, though, at the catering college. They don't go in for that sort of thing." "I should imagine it's jolly hard work in this weather, working in a red-hot kitchen." "You get used to it. You have to, if you intend to be a chef. But it's good to feel the warmth of the sun for a change, after working at a boiling hot range." They were quiet for a few moments. Then Ian plucked up courage to ask what he wanted to know. "So, it's all over, is it, with you and whoever he was at college?" "He was called Patrick. Yes, it's all over. He's left now anyway, because he was a year above me, but I doubt that it would have continued after he left. I decided that he was too much for me, if you know what I mean." She looked at him keenly, raising her eyebrows. He nodded. "Yes, I think I do," he replied. "I've another 2 years to do at college," said Sophie, "and I want to get to the end of my course without having to leave under a cloud. Actually, that was what happened to a girl who was in the same hall as me, and on the same course as well, so we'd become quite friendly. We knew she had a boyfriend, not one of the college chaps. He was in the RAF, stationed quite nearby, and she went off at the weekends to meet him. Anyway, Pamela, that was her name, didn't come back at the end of the second term after the Easter break. Her mother wrote a letter to the college principal saying that Pamela was getting married and she wouldn't be returning to college. The news trickled round on the grapevine, of course, and we all guessed the reason. Then Pamela wrote to me and said that she was 3 months pregnant and they were getting married. She said her parents were quite complacent about it because they knew it was serious between her and Victor. I can't understand why she started the course at all. And I knew that if it happened to me, my mother would certainly not be complacent about it. Anyway, I shall make sure that it doesn't. So, I take it that this Patrick wanted rather more than you were prepared for. A lot more. The girls and the men do get friendly. It's inevitable at a co-ed college. We have separate halls of residence at either side of the campus, as far away as possible, and it's a strict rule that never the twain shall meet, except for dances and social occasions. But there are ways of getting round this, as you can imagine. I've heard of girls who've been smuggled into the men's hostels, and vice versa. Goodness knows why none of them have been caught, at least not so far. And I suppose this Patrick wanted you to... You've got it. He wanted me to stay the night, or part of it. I refused, of course. Rules are there for a very good reason, and it's a most foolhardy thing to do. Besides, I didn't feel that way about him, and I don't think I ever would have done. He was just a chap I got friendly with. Good fun at first, but not somebody I could feel really close to. So, that was that. Yes, I see. I'm glad you didn't get too involved. He sounds a bit of a bounder, as they used to say in the olden days. Ian remembered very well a conversation that he and Sophie had had when they were going out together. They knew they were getting closer to each other. Their kisses and embraces were becoming more ardent. Ian was quite an innocent lad, but he knew very well where it could have led, and he knew that he was not ready for that, and neither was Sophie. They had agreed that they were young, with all their lives ahead of them, and it was not time for their tentative love-making to go any further. There was far too much to lose. Sophie had told him how some of the girls at school boasted about what they got up to with their boyfriends. She wasn't sure that she believed them, but even if she did, she thought it was foolish. She knew she had to wait until the time was right, and she felt that she would know when that time came. Ian told her now that the same sort of thing had happened between him and Alison, that she had wanted more than he was prepared to give. He did not want, however, to tell Sophie the full story. He often thought about it, though, and he realized that it had not been a good idea to get involved with Alison in the first place. But he had lost Sophie and thought that Alison was a very attractive girl. He had soon realized that she was given quite a lot of freedom at home. Her parents' guest house was small, and they did not take many visitors, just couples for bed and breakfast. Ian's student friend Darren had a room there, which was a sort of study-cum-bedroom, and Alison's room was similar. She entertained her friends up there, where they chatted and played records. She even had her own small television set. As the only daughter, she was inclined to be indulged, if not spoiled. Ian was surprised that she was allowed to invite him up to her room as well. They had indulged in kisses and embraces, but Ian was always aware that Alison's parents were not far away. Later in the evening, her mother would knock on the door, bringing them tea and biscuits on a tray. It was all very cosy, and Ian was content to go along with it. Then one night in mid-June, Alison had told him that her parents had gone out for the evening to a dinner and dance at her father's Masonic lodge, and would not be back until about 1 o'clock in the morning. "She won't be disturbing us at 10 o'clock, Alison had said with a knowing grin, "so you can stay longer. Not all night, of course, but, well, we can make the most of it, can't we?" She'd sat on the bed and patted the candlewick cover next to her. "Come on, Ian. What are we waiting for?" She'd begun to unbutton her blouse. "I know you want to, just as much as I do." Ian had felt himself going red and was completely at a loss as to what to say. He'd blurted out the first thing that came into his head. "No, Alison, we can't. That's not what I want at all. You've got it all wrong. We can't do that. It's not right. Not for us." "But why not?" She'd pouted, then looked at him provocatively. "I thought you liked me. A lot." "I do like you, Alison," he'd replied, "but not like that. I'm not ready for all that, and neither are you. I'm sorry, I don't want to upset you, but I can't do what you want, and I can't stay any longer now." He'd grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair, bolted out of the door and down the stairs. She'd jumped off the bed and ran after him. "Ian, don't go. I'm sorry. I really thought you—" But he'd already been out of the front door and dashing along the street. Fortunately, she hadn't followed him. He'd leaned against a wall to get his breath back, then walked slowly home. If his dad or Norma asked why he was home early, he'd say that Alison was not feeling very well. As it happened, they had not inquired. And neither had they asked the why and wherefore when he told them a few days later that he would not be seeing Alison again. She'd phoned him, though, at home, a couple of days after the incident. "I'm sorry, Ian. I know now that I shouldn't have suggested what I did, and I understand that you didn't want to." She hadn't sounded as though she was laughing at him, or thinking he was prudish. "And, please, can I see you again? I don't want it to end like this." But Ian knew that he didn't want to see her again. "I'm sorry, Alison," he'd said. "I don't think it's right with you and me. It just wouldn't work." "I'm sorry," she'd said again. "It was the girls at school, you see. They're always on about what they do, and they keep asking if I've done it yet. And so I thought—" "I don't care what you thought, Alison," he'd replied, trying not to shout, because he was really angry. The fact that she had been talking about him to the girls at school, comparing notes, made it worse. "You'd better find someone else to do what you want, not me. And I don't think the girls sound like very good friends." He'd been aware he sounded a bit stuffy and pompous, but he hadn't cared. "Goodbye, Alison. It's best if we call it a day. I'm sure you know that." He'd put the phone down. He had not seen her since then, nor had he heard much about her. He had not told Darren what had happened, only that he was not seeing Alison anymore. Darren had not asked for any details. He told Ian that she seemed cheerful enough, and had not said anything to him about their separation. "She doesn't seem to be eating her heart out," he'd said. "Maybe she wasn't right for you. I never really thought she was, you know. Is there anyone else in the picture?" Ian and Darren were good mates, and the mistake that Darren had made regarding Ian's sexual preferences was never referred to. Darren was inquisitive, though, and liked to know what was going on in the love lives of his friends, even though they were not of his persuasion. "No," Ian had replied, "although I still keep thinking about Sophie. I've never really forgotten her, but I know I should try to put her out of my mind. She had a fellow at college, and still has as far as I know. I shall no doubt see her when I go to Harrogate, unless she's doing something else, of course." "Well, there are other fish in the sea for a good-looking lad like you." "Maybe so. What about you? You've not met anyone?" "No, not yet, but I'm okay. I've enjoyed my first year here, and I've got some good mates like you. Maybe next year there'll be a new bunch of students in September.
I'm still waiting for someone to share my digs, but I don't want to make a mistake."
"No, of course not," Ian had replied. He'd reflected that some lads might not be as understanding as he had been about Darren's faux pas. Darren might well have ended up with a bloody nose. Ian and Sophie's stroll had taken them along the Strand, down the hill leading to the Valley Gardens. As they walked, he told her he had realised that he and Alison were not right together. He did not want to tell her the full story. Sometimes he felt that he had behaved like an idiot, running off as he had done, as though he was scared out of his wits. He had acted on the spur of the moment, surprised, shocked even, at what she was suggesting so early in their friendship. The possible outcome of such an encounter was too awful to even think about.
"Alison was too hot to handle," he said now with a laugh. "I didn't think it was right to, you know what I mean, and I told her so. I think she had been egged on, though. I remember you telling me about the girls at your school, and I rather think it was the same with her. She didn't want to be the only one who hadn't. But I had no intention of being used as a sort of trophy."
"She sounds quite immature," said Sophie, "and it's stupid to take any notice of what the girls at school say. A lot of it is only in their minds, wishful thinking, you might say. I'm glad we've met up again, Ian. I've missed you, you know," she added, smiling at him warmly and not at all shyly. He took hold of her hand, the first time he had done so that evening.
"And I've missed you as well," he told her. "Would you like to come out again? Perhaps to the cinema? Or a coffee bar? Or somewhere? I won't be working every evening, and I'm here for a few weeks."
"Yes, I would love to," Sophie replied. She looked at him squarely. "I know where I am with you, Ian. We think the same way, don't we?"
"Yes, I think we do," he agreed.
They stopped for a moment on their walk through the colonnades, below a canopy of wisteria and trailing vine leaves. There was no one else in sight, as Ian kissed her gently on the lips. "It's good to be together again, Sophie," he whispered, as she responded to his kiss. Chapter 18. It was a hectic time for the Walkers and the Clarksons during the last 2 weeks in August, as they prepared to move to their new homes. Sam Walker was the busiest of all, as he, together with his friend and partner Colin Wyatt, dealt with the organisation of the business they were taking over from the Bateson family. There was a notice in the shop window. "Opening soon under new management. Walker and Wyatt Sports Gear. We promise you the same excellent service as before, and look forward to your custom." The windows were now empty, but there was the remainder of the old stock to be sold at reduced prices in the stockroom, and new stock was already arriving daily. Thomas Bateson was proving to be a great help in every way he could to make the changeover as trouble-free as possible. His assistant Desmond, a young man about the same age as Sam, was staying on as chief sales assistant, with Thomas's firm recommendation. They were also advertising for a junior sales assistant, either male or female, not necessarily with experience, as Thomas assured them that Desmond would be a very good tutor, with all the patience and diplomacy needed in a salesperson. As both Sam and Colin were keen golfers, they had decided to concentrate largely on what they knew, and stock a wider range of golfing equipment than the shop had held in the past. The other sports were not neglected. There would be equipment for hikers and climbers, as the Yorkshire Dales were not far distant, as well as gear for tennis and cricket enthusiasts. Neither would indoor sports be overlooked: badminton, squash and table tennis, even darts and chess. Val was very busy with all the household side of the removal, with the help of her mother and her sister-in-law Thelma, taking down curtains, emptying cupboards and bookshelves, then packing everything carefully in tea chests, provided by the removal firm, and labelling each box accordingly: kitchen utensils, crockery and china, books, ornaments, household linen, etc. Some of the curtains could be used again in their new home, while others would not fit the windows. After taking the measurements at the new house, Val had ordered fresh curtains to be made by a firm in Halifax Market that she knew to be reliable and not too pricey. Cissy was equally busy preparing for the move. Her mother had agreed to help, but Hannah Foster did not do so with the same grace and willingness that Val's mother had shown.
"Well, I hope you're not getting ideas above your station, you and Walter," she told her daughter, not just once but repeatedly, "going to live up there among the posh folk."
Cissy knew that her mother was probably a little envious.
"Course we're not, ma'am," she replied. "Walter's earning good money now, you know. He's almost one of the bosses at Walker's."
Hannah sniffed.
"Aye, he is. I know Walter's a good lad."
She had always had a soft spot for her son-in-law, and if anything went wrong between them, she would always say that Cissy must be the one to blame.
"I suppose you'll be giving up your job at the market now," she went on, "seeing you'll be living among the toffs."
But Cissy had no intention of giving up her job. She loved working at the market, meeting different people each day, and it was pocket money for her, without having to rely on Walter to give her an allowance. She knew, though, that the move to Queensbury would involve some changes. A change of school for Paul, for instance, although she was sure that he would soon settle down in a new environment. He was a bright lad, and seemed to be learning things very quickly. He was 5 years old, and could already read the books about Janet and John that he brought home from school. A change of playgroup, too, for Holly. Probably the one from where Russell had been banned, Cissy reflected, although she would be starting proper school before very long. Cissy would also have further to travel to the market in the centre of Halifax, but she would deal with that problem in due course. Before the move was due to take place, however, Val had a phone call from Hazel, the policewoman who had been involved when Lucy was missing. It was one evening during the second week in August.
"Hello there, Val," she began. "It's Hazel, your friendly policewoman. Do you remember me?"
"Yes, of course I do," replied Val. "There's nothing wrong, is there?" She knew, though, that there couldn't be. Sam was at home, both children were tucked up in bed, and Hazel sounded cheerful enough.
"No, nothing wrong," said Hazel.
She laughed.
"Why does everyone assume it's bad news when they get a call from the police? No, far from it. Do you remember Claire Dawson?" she asked, then went on to say, "Silly question. Of course you remember her. How could you forget her?"
"Yes, I remember," said Val thoughtfully. "As you say, I could hardly forget her." Claire Dawson was the woman who had absconded with baby Lucy in her pram, causing a lot of worry and heartache. But fortunately the problem had been resolved quite quickly. "How is Claire?" Val asked. "Much more contented now, I hope."
"Yes, she was thrilled to bits when she rang me, to say she had some good news. You can probably guess what it is. She's expecting a baby. Not till early next year, but she's very excited. And I thought you would like to know. I remember you were so kind and understanding with her, Val, and you did such a lot to help her get things into perspective."
"Well, I hope so, and it's certainly good news."
"I think she would like to see you and tell you about it herself, but she feels rather hesitant about asking you to go round again. Do you think you might?"
"Yes, of course. I'll go and see her and tell her how pleased I am. Actually, I'm very busy at the moment, but I'll try and make time. We're moving, you see, to Harrogate. My husband is going into business with a friend. They're taking over a sports shop." "You mean he's leaving the mill?" Val explained that the time seemed to be right for a change of career because of the way things were going in the woolen industry. "So it will be a big change for all of us. We're moving at the end of August, and the shop will be reopening soon afterwards." "Well, I wish you all the very best," said Hazel. "I'm sure your husband will make a success of it. He's a very go-ahead sort of fellow, isn't he? Now, shall I give you Claire's phone number? You don't want to call and find that she's not at home, especially when you're so busy. I know she'll be delighted to see you." Val wrote down the number and said she would see Claire later in the week. "Who was that?" asked Sam, when she returned to the living room. "It was Hazel, the policewoman." "What did she want?" he asked, looking concerned. "There's nothing wrong, is there?" "No, not at all. She rang to tell me some news about Claire. Claire Dawson. You know who I mean." "Yes, indeed I do. The woman who ran off with our Lucy. So, what about her?" Val knew that Sam had not been so magnanimous in his attitude towards Claire as she had been, and who could blame him? "She's expecting a baby now," said Val, "and she's thrilled to bits, of course. I said that I'd go round and see her," she added tentatively, guessing what Sam's reaction might be. "Why?" he asked. "So she's having a baby, and I hope it goes well for her, but I don't see what it has to do with us." "Claire was pleased when I went to see her before," Val explained patiently. "She'd had a miscarriage, and that was what led her to do what she did. I told her that I'd had a miscarriage, more than one, and that it all worked out okay in the end. She's rather an insecure sort of person, Sam. I just want to go and tell her how pleased I am." Sam smiled at her lovingly. "Yes, I see. You go ahead, darling. I don't mean to be as heartless as I might sound, but I can't be as forgiving and understanding as you are. You're such a kind and thoughtful person, Val. That's one of the reasons I married you. That and the fact that I fancied you like mad. Don't ever change, will you?" "Oh, come off it, Sam. I'm not all that wonderful. Come to think of it, you're not so bad yourself. You don't mind me going, then?" "No, I don't mind. But you won't take Lucy, will you?" "Of course not. Don't be silly. It would be embarrassing all round. And Lucy might possibly remember her. Who knows what children retain in their memories? I won't take Russell either. He behaves a lot better now, but he won't sit quietly while ladies are talking." "I don't blame him." "I'll leave them with my mum. She always enjoys having them. She'll miss them, Sam, when we move, and so will my dad." "I know that," said Sam. "And that's another thing, Val, that I love about you. You've agreed to this move, and everything it involves with scarcely a murmur of complaint, although I know it will be a wrench for you, leaving your hometown." "It's not as though we're emigrating to Australia," said Val. "It's the same county, not far away at all, and Mum and Dad will be able to come and visit us, possibly stay for a few days. It will be a nice change for them. Anyway, you're my husband, aren't you? And where you go, I go." Val phoned Claire, and it was agreed that she should visit her on the following Friday afternoon. She was welcomed as though she were royalty and shown into the living room. It was very clean and tidy, as though Claire had made a special effort for her guest. Val mused that it would not be so tidy when the baby arrived. Claire seemed a little ill at ease at first. No doubt the memory of her misdemeanour still lingered at the back of her mind. Val soon put her at her ease. "I'm so pleased to hear your good news," she told her. You are looking very well, positively radiant. When is the baby due?" "The end of January," said Claire. "I'm only about 3.5 months, but I knew straight away that I was pregnant. I was usually so regular, you see," she said in a confidential tone. "Anyway, we went to see the doctor, and he confirmed that it was so. I'm crossing my fingers and praying that all will go well this time." "There's no reason why not, if you take care, especially for the first few months, and I know you will." "Yes, I felt ill right from the start the last time, but this time I feel fine." She smiled a little coyly. "Do you remember I told you that Greg was taking me with him on the trip to Austria? That's when it must have happened. It was a wonderful holiday. Well, a holiday for me, although Greg was working. I felt so relaxed and carefree, and here we are." She smiled happily. "I'm sure Greg must be pleased," said Val. "Is he away at the moment?" "Yes, he's on a week's tour to the Cotswolds. He'll be back on Sunday. It's all coming and going with that job, but he's asked if he can do just the British tours from now on, instead of the continental ones." There was a pause in the conversation. "How is Lucy?" Claire asked, a little diffidently, as though she had been plucking up courage to mention the little girl. "I expect she's growing quickly, isn't she?" "Yes, they don't stay tiny babies for long. She was 1 in June. She's walking now and trying to talk." Claire looked pensive, but Val had no intention of bringing the little girl to see her. Enough was enough. She guessed that Claire was a shy young woman, who probably did not find it easy to make friends, and having found a sympathetic person, she might be inclined to cling and become dependent. She was obviously pleased at Val's visit, but that must be as far as it could go. Besides, they were moving away, so there was no possibility of an ongoing friendship. She knew she must tell Claire what was in store for them. "Actually, there are big changes ahead for us," she began. "We're moving soon to Harrogate. Sam and I and the children." Claire looked bewildered. "But your husband is a manager at the mill, isn't he?" "Yes, so he is, but it's time for a change of direction." "Oh, I'm sorry you're leaving. I'll just go and make a pot of tea. Then you can tell me all about it." She arrived back in a little while, with a tray laden with china cups and saucers in a design of pink roses, no doubt her best tea set, and a matching teapot, milk jug and sugar basin. She placed the tray on an occasional table. "Just a mo," she said excitedly. "I'll get the cakes." She returned with 2 plates, one holding almond tarts, which Val's mother always called maids of honour, and another with a large cake decorated with frosted icing and cherries. She placed them on the second of the nest of tables, then placed the smallest table in front of Val. She poured the tea like a perfect hostess, and invited Val to help herself to cake. Neither had she forgotten the napkins, freshly laundered damask ones rather than paper serviettes. "My goodness," said Val, "you've been busy. Homemade, aren't they?" "Yes, I make all my own cakes," said Claire, with a hint of pride. "I know I won't have as much time to bake when the baby arrives. Now, tell me about your move. When are you going?" Val explained again, as she had done several times to different people, that Sam had decided it was time to leave the mill because of a slight downturn in the woolen industry, and the opportunity to take over the sports shop had come at just the right moment. "So you'll be leaving all your friends and your family," said Claire. "You must feel rather sad about that." We're not going very far away, and we have some friends in Harrogate already. They have a restaurant there, and we'll be living quite near to them. Plus, there are always new friends to be made, wherever you go." "Yes, and I'm sure you make friends easily," said Claire wistfully. "I've never found it all that easy, and since I gave up my job, when I was pregnant before, I felt very much on my own."
"The last time I saw you, you were thinking of going back to work, weren't you?"
"Yes, but then this happened." She patted her stomach. "So there would be no point, would there?"
"No, none at all," agreed Val. "But you don't need to feel that you're on your own when the baby arrives. You'll be able to meet other young mothers at the clinic. And before the baby arrives, you'll be going to the clinic quite regularly for checkups, won't you? I know they try to make it a sort of social occasion at some places."
"Yes, I shall be going there," said Claire. "They want to keep an eye on me because of what happened last time. Yes, I've a lot to look forward to and a lot to be thankful for, I suppose."
"Indeed you have," said Val. It passed through her mind that Claire was the sort of person to whom the glass was always half empty rather than half full, a tendency towards pessimism rather than looking on the bright side. She had seemed on top of the world when Val arrived, but now, on hearing of her departure, she was becoming a little introspective again, even though she and Val were not close friends.
"I really must congratulate you on your baking," said Val, changing the subject.
"These almond tarts are delicious, as nice as any I've tasted. And may I try just a tiny piece of your iced cake? Never mind my waistline. I can't resist it." This was not idle flattery. Val meant every word. The cakes compared admirably with the ones that Janice Grundy made, and she was regarded as a professional.
"Thank you," said Claire, looking pleased. "I've always enjoyed baking and cooking."
They chatted for a while about the move to Harrogate. Val told her about the house and Sam's plans for the shop. "It will be a big change for us all, but worthwhile in the end, I'm sure." Claire asked for her address, saying that she would send a card at Christmas and inform her when the baby arrived. It was a pleasant afternoon, and they promised to keep in touch. But when all was said and done, Claire was only an acquaintance, not a close friend, and Val knew that she would never be able to regard her as one. The circumstances of their first meeting could never be entirely forgotten. There was little time to think of anything over the next couple of weeks, as they prepared for the removal. During her odd, reflective moments, Val pondered that it would be a great upheaval for her, even though they were moving only a short distance away. She had never been away from her hometown for more than a couple of weeks at a time, whereas Sam had done his 2 years of national service. Val had always been close to her parents, especially since her twin brothers had moved away, and she had several good friends in the town. There was Cissy, of course, and she knew that Cissy would miss her very much, although the separation would be somewhat mollified for her friend, because they would be moving into the house that she and Sam were vacating. Val smiled to herself, knowing that her friend was looking on this as a step up the social ladder. And Cissy had other friends in the town, as well as the job that she enjoyed so much. Val would miss her, and the girls in the office with whom she still kept in touch, and her sister-in-law Thelma, who had become a bosom friend. But there would be Janice and Phil not far away, and new friends to meet in a new neighbourhood. She and Sam sat in the lounge on the evening before the removal day, surrounded by stacked-up furniture and packing cases. "Well, we're almost there," said Sam. "Only one more night in our first home. and I know we're going to be just as happy in the next one."
"Yes, fresh fields and pastures new," said Val musingly.
"It's woods, actually," said Sam.
"What is?"
"It's fresh woods, not fields," he replied, "although it's often misquoted. I know, because we studied Milton for our school certificate. It's from a poem called Lycidas. Tomorrow to fresh woods and pastures new."
"My goodness," said Val with a laugh. "How lucky I am to be married to a grammar school boy. I bow to your superior knowledge."
"Well, whatever they are, fields or woods, mountains or valleys, we'll travel them together," said Sam. "Come along, Mrs. Walker. It's time for bed. It's a big day tomorrow."
Chapter 19. They moved on a Friday morning. After watching all their possessions loaded into the removal van and seeing it drive away, they locked the door and set off in their own car in the wake of the van.
"New house! New house!"
chanted Russell excitedly. He had been with them to the house in Harrogate a couple of times and was looking forward to living in his new home. Now he was a big boy. He would no longer be sharing a room with Lucy. He would sleep in the back bedroom, where he would have lots of room to spread out his toy cars and garage, and his railway track with the wooden engine and coaches. Sam was looking forward to the time when Russell would be old enough to appreciate the tin-plate Hornby trains that he had played with as a boy and had kept in good condition for such time as he would have a son of his own. Lucy would sleep in the small room, often called the box room, but it was quite a good size. It would all seem strange to her at first, but Val knew that she would soon settle down with the people she knew around her. Her loving parents and her big brother, who now regarded her as his nice little sister, not the nuisance and the interloper he had once thought of her as. They would have the weekend in which to get the house reasonably shipshape, although it would take ages to make it completely to their liking. Sam's greatest sorrow was leaving his garden. It had been something of a wilderness when they'd moved in, and he had spent long and enjoyable hours getting it to its present state, with a smooth lawn, a rockery, well-tended bushes, flower beds and shady trees. Now he would have to start again, although the new garden was in pretty good shape. They had had a summer house in Queensbury, which had been a fad of Val's at the time. There was a small greenhouse at the new house, with flourishing tomato plants and cucumbers, and other lesser-known hothouse vegetables. Val was contemplating taking this up as a new hobby. It was doubtful that Sam would have time to attend to it, with everything else he had to do, at home and at the store. When they arrived late on Friday morning, Sam supervised the removal of the furniture, while Val kept the children in the garden away from any possible danger. Fortunately, it was a sunny day. Everything in the kitchen was in working order, so they had a quick lunch of beans on toast before tackling the unloading of the packing cases. Lucy was ready for a sleep, and Russell helped by carrying unbreakable items such as kitchen utensils, but not knives or scissors, books, cushions, and his own toys to their allotted places. "A place for everything, and everything in its place," was a favourite saying of Val's mother. Val had always tried to keep to it, but she reflected now on the amount of stuff. What other word was there to describe it that one accumulated in just a few years? And who was it who said that there should be nothing in your home that was not useful or beautiful? Or, as her own mother might have said, neither use nor ornament. Val thought about this as she looked at the teddy bear with one eye and a loose leg that had been a childhood favourite, and a pot cat with a red bow round its neck, a birthday present from Sissy many years ago. Surely there was such a thing as sentimental value as well. They were exhausted by the time Friday came to an end. On Saturday, Sam was obliged to divide his time between his home and the store, which would be opening on Monday. On Sunday, though, their good friends Janice and Phil came to help, as their business was closed on that day. Russell was left in charge of the two little girls, his own sister and Sarah, now almost 2 years old. "We can trust him now," Val assured Janice, sensing her friend's slightly troubled air. "We couldn't have done at one time, but his behaviour really has improved such a lot." The 3 children played in Russell's bedroom, with his cars and Lucy's dolls and cuddly animals, an adult popping in every 5 minutes or so to see that all was well. End of CD 7. CD 8. Val made time during the afternoon to prepare a casserole, beef, potatoes and vegetables, all in one large dish, which cooked slowly in the oven. And at 6 o'clock, when the work was more or less completed and they were too tired to do any more, they all sat down to a tasty hot pot, followed by an apple pie, which Janice and Phil had contributed from their freezer. Sam brought out a bottle of sherry after the meal. Then it was Phil who proposed a toast. "To Sam, and the success of Walker and Wyatt Sports Gear, and to Sam and Val in their new home. Good luck, good health, and happiness." The children drank from beakers of orange juice, even Lucy in her high chair. They seemed to sense the air of excitement, although it was bedtime and the 2 little girls were yawning. "Thank you for your good wishes and all your help today," said Sam. "It is much appreciated, I assure you." "And all the best for the grand opening tomorrow," added Phil. "I'm sure you'll have lots of customers." "I hope so," said Sam. "But there's no grand opening ceremony. We've not invited the mayor and the town council. We're just going to open. Well, reopen with new owners and a new name, and hope for the best." Sam could not help feeling at the heart of him a little anxious that it would all go well for himself and for Colin. He had given up a great deal, and so had Colin, to take a step into the unknown. Val also was leaving behind so much that was familiar and loved. He knew that the success of the new venture was in the hands of himself and Colin. But they were both ready for the challenge and looking forward to working together as partners, as well as long-time friends. "Let's go and see Daddy in his new shop, shall we?" said Val to Russell on Monday morning. Sam had set off bright and early, while Val and the children were still having their breakfast. He had seemed cheerful and optimistic. Val had been aware of his air of preoccupation, which he had been trying to hide the previous evening, but that seemed to have vanished. She had kissed him and wished him luck, and said that she would have a walk round later. Her thoughts had been with him all morning. It was now almost 11 o'clock, by which time they should have found their feet after the opening of the store at 9 o'clock. Val doubted that there would have been a rush of customers. It was not like a newly opened bakery or a butcher's shop with fresh produce on sale. She guessed that most of the customers that day, or even that week, would come out of curiosity to see what changes had been made. It was also a specialized shop, of interest mainly to those who played a sport of some kind. If she were honest, it was not the sort of shop that would normally be of great interest to her. She had learnt to play tennis at school, but had not kept it up, and had played table tennis at the youth club she had attended in her early teens, but that also was a thing of the past. Golf was Sam's thing. She could not imagine ever playing it herself, nor had Sam ever suggested it. He had always regarded it as his recreation, something apart from his home and family and his job, and she had never objected to his absences. She knew how the sport relaxed him, and she had never been what one would call a golf widow. Now, though, Sam's hobby would be part of his work, as well as being his hobby. Russell was excited.
"Daddy's shop!"
he shouted.
"Daddy's shop!"
He had been there once or twice, and it was something else to interest him, as well as the new house and new friends, like Auntie Janice and Uncle Phil, and Sarah, another little girl for him to play with, although she was rather small. It was a good walk along the Stray, and then through the streets to the other side of the town. Russell trotted along manfully at the side of the pram, with Lucy sitting up and staring around curiously at everything they passed, especially the dogs on leads. Val had noticed before how she smiled and pointed to them, and she had wondered if it might be a good idea to get a dog as a pet for the children, and for her and Sam, of course. Or had she quite enough to do with Russell and Lucy? It would be something to consider when they were more settled in their new home. She could see as they drew near to the town that Russell was flagging a little.
"Tired, Mummy,"
he said.
"Ride on Lucy's pram."
"All right, then. Up you go." She lifted him onto the seat that was fastened to the front of the pram. He grinned and gave a chuckle.
"See Daddy soon. Daddy's got a new shop."
Alice was as anxious as anyone to see the display in the windows. She had seen the shop gradually taking shape, but had not seen the final result. When she did, she stood and stared in admiration. Colin's wife, Carol, had been an art student, and a very talented one. She had worked as a window dresser, but there had not been much scope in Halifax. Then she had worked for a department store in Bradford, but that had come to an end when their son Seamus was born 2 years ago. She now worked from home, designing greetings cards, and had a few outlets for her work. She had been delighted at the idea of designing a backdrop for the windows of the new store, and when she had taken the measurements, she had set to work at home. It was a double-fronted shop, with one window concentrating mainly on golf, and the other on hiking and climbing. One scene depicted a golf course, with men playing the game, and others walking with trolleys or carrying golf bags. There were trees in the background, and a blue sky above with fluffy white clouds. The other was a scene of rugged hills, such as one might see in Swaledale or Coverdale. On the peaks there were climbers with ropes. Sheep grazed on the lower pastures, and a rippling stream flowed through the bottom of the valley. Walking along its banks were hikers with colourful clothing and rucksacks. One window held golfing equipment: bags, clubs, a specimen trolley, and a pyramid of boxes of balls. Clothing, too: anoraks, waterproof jackets and trousers, gaily patterned Aran jumpers, caps and sturdy shoes. The hiking window displayed rucksacks, climbing boots, ice axes, ropes, a small tent, maps of Yorkshire, and clothing for all weather. A small section of each window was devoted to other sports. There were tennis rackets and balls, cricket bats and balls, but not the appropriate clothing. Sam had explained that different sports would be highlighted as the seasons changed, but golfing and hiking enthusiasts did not stop because the weather was inclement. In another section were darts and dartboards, table tennis bats and balls, chess sets, even Scrabble and Monopoly. Something to suit almost everyone for outdoor activities or the more leisurely indoor pursuits. Val stood for a few moments, very impressed with the eye-catching display. It should certainly be an incentive to would-be shoppers. "Come along, Russell," she said. "Let's go and see Daddy." He was hopping on one leg, then the other with impatience. He had looked in the window, but there was nothing of particular interest to a little boy.
Yes, yes, he cried, and Lucy.
Oh, yes, we won't forget Lucy, said Val. Never again would she leave Lucy outside in her pram after the frightening experience they had all endured. She didn't mention it to Russell, though. Possibly he had forgotten, as he never mentioned it now. But his tolerance of his little sister had improved from that moment on. Val lifted the little girl out of the pram, thinking that she felt heavier each time she picked her up. She pushed open the door, and Russell laughed at the strange jangling sound that the old-fashioned bell made. The shop was not crowded, but she had not expected it to be. There was a customer at each counter, one woman being served by Colin, who smiled and raised his hand in greeting as he saw Val come in. Desmond was serving the other man, and 2 people were browsing, but Sam was nowhere in sight just then. The layout was the same as it had been when they first saw the store. Russell made a beeline for the central display, where things were near enough to touch, not out of reach behind glass. "Now don't touch, Russell," said Val, imagining a pyramid of boxes crashing to the floor. But Russell was staring at a row of footballs on a carpet of artificial grass.
"Footballs, Mummy," he said, "like the men on the telly."
He did not understand the game, of course, but he enjoyed watching a match, or part of it, until he got bored with his daddy. He gave one of them a gentle kick, seeming to know that he mustn't be too boisterous. It didn't move very far, and Val didn't scold him. Balls were meant to be kicked, and it was very tempting. Sam appeared at that moment. "Sorry, I didn't see you come in. I was busy in the stockroom. So, what's your verdict?"
"It's great," replied Val. "The window displays are superb. I'm most impressed." "Football, Daddy," said Russell. "I like that big football."
"I'm sure you do, but that one is too big and heavy for you, Russell. We have some smaller ones. Look, over here." Russell followed him to the other side, where there was a basket of smaller white and black balls, much lighter, and not liable to make as much damage to windows and greenhouses. "I'll bring one home tonight," said Sam. "Then we can have a game in the garden before you go to bed."
"And Lucy," said Russell.
"I don't think Lucy's big enough to play football yet," said Val. She had put her down, as she was too heavy to carry. Lucy toddled round the display stand, holding her big brother's hand.
"Don't touch Lucy," he said.
Sam and Val laughed. "It's very tempting," said Val, "for grown-ups as well, I imagine. Have you had many customers?" "Quite a few, not too bad," replied Sam, "considering it's Monday morning and not a good day for shopping. A few came out of curiosity, I suppose, but they all bought something. The cut-price golf balls have nearly all gone, but I think all our goods are reasonably priced. And we will take orders if the item is not in stock. Thomas said they did a lot of trade that way." "Has Thomas been in today?" "No, a wise decision, I think. He's been a great help getting us started, but now it's up to us. And Desmond has all the facts at his fingertips. Are you walking back home now?"
"Of course, what else can I do?"
"I meant, are you doing any shopping while you're here in the town?"
"No, not today. We've just come to see you. I know it's quite a long way to walk, but I've not much else to do. I'll go and have a word with Colin, then we'll set off for home." "Good to see you, Colin," said Val. "I hope it all works out well for you and Sam. You've taken a great leap into the unknown, but you've both got what it takes to succeed. And will you please tell Carol how I love the window display? It will certainly bring the customers in. What a talented lady she is."
"Yes, I must agree with that," said Colin. "You must come round and see her. She was asking about you. You can bring Russell to play with Seamus. He's a bit younger than Russell, but he's been a bit lonely since we moved here. Carol's sister and her husband and children live near us in Halifax. I know we'll miss them, but I'm sure we've made the right decision. Carol's busy with her greetings cards, so it might be better if you ring and arrange a meeting."
"Yes, I'll do that. Bye for now, Colin," she said as another customer approached. Sam said goodbye to them all, then went to talk to a customer who was needing help. Val was thoughtful as she walked back home. It had occurred to her that she was the only one of her close associates who was not working. Carol, who, like herself, must have found it a great upheaval moving to another town, was happily engrossed in her artwork, which she enjoyed and which earned her some money. Janice was busy in the coffee pot for a large part of each day, and Cissy, back in Halifax, was still enjoying her job at the market. Whereas, what was she, Val, doing? Snap out of it, she told herself. She was looking after her children and supporting her husband. Wasn't that what she had always wanted to do? She remembered how she had been so depressed when she had wanted a baby and there had been no sign of one. They had adopted Russell, and then miraculously Lucy had come along. What more could she want? The store closed at 5:30, and Sam was home by 6 o'clock. He had deposited the day's takings at the nearby bank just before it closed, bringing the remainder of the money, taken later in the day, home for safekeeping. He and Colin would take it in turns to do the banking. They were quite satisfied with the turnover for the day. Desmond, who had been in the shop with the previous owners, said that the amount compared favourably, slightly up, if anything, for a Monday. So far so good, Sam and Colin agreed, and were confident that it would improve. Russell was waiting for his daddy to come home with the new football and insisted on a game straight away. The children had had tea, and Val was preparing the evening meal for her and Sam to enjoy in peace when they had gone to bed. Sam complimented Val on the braised steak and onions with fluffy mashed potato, followed by apple tart and cream.
"Homemade, isn't it?" he said. "I can tell the difference. It's delicious, darling."
"Yes, a treat for your first day at the store," she replied. "It passed the afternoon nicely doing some baking, and it's a change from sorting out our belongings." Sam looked at her, a little concerned.
"Do I detect a hint of dissatisfaction or sadness, maybe? I know it's been a big upheaval for you moving here, and I do appreciate it that you've done it for me. Cheer up, darling. I know it's all new and different, but we're all here together, you and me and Russell and Lucy."
"I am trying to be cheerful," said Val. "And I've told myself that I'm being silly. I've got you and the children and a lovely new home."
"But you miss the old one, is that it?"
"Partly. I feel a bit lonely with only the children for company. There were lots of people to see in Halifax. Mum and Dad, of course, and your family, especially Thelma. And Cissy, we used to meet sometimes when she'd finished at the market. And there were the girls at the office. I don't know anyone here."
"You know Janice and Phil."
"Yes, but Janice is busy. She works jolly hard at the cafe, and she doesn't get much time for socialising. And Carol's busy too. Colin suggested I should go and see her, but she's so engrossed in her artwork that I would have to arrange a time. I can't just pop round."
"You'll soon make new friends. You're that sort of person, aren't you? You don't find it hard to get on with new people."
Didn't you say you would try Russell at playgroup again when he's turned 3? You'll get to meet the other mothers there, won't you? Yes, no doubt I will. But I feel as though I should be doing something else, as well as looking after the children. Janice is working, and Sissy, and Carol works at home. I know I can't go out to work, nor do I want to, but I want to feel useful. Oh dear, it's your first day at the shop, and I'm doing nothing but moan. I'm sorry, darling. Don't worry, I understand. But you're such a good mother. And what would I do without you? We're very happy, aren't we? Of course we are. I've told you, I'm being silly. I'll try to snap out of it. Sam was thoughtful for a moment. Then, how about you doing the bookkeeping for us, he said, and being in charge of the orders? Thomas said his father used to take care of all that, especially when he got older and didn't come into the shop as much. We really need someone to take it on. I suppose we thought we'd do it between us, but it would be great if you could do it. What do you think? I could try, said Val. Maths is not my strong point, but I did okay with it at school, and I'm used to office work. Yes, why not? She found she was smiling with pleasure. We'll need an accountant, possibly a couple of times a year, to make sure that everything is in order. And we will pay you. We won't expect you to do it for nothing. Don't be daft, Sam. I don't want paying. It's a family business. Well, ours and Colin's. And I'd like to think I'm a part of it. A small allowance, then, so you can treat yourself to a new dress or something when you feel like it. Val laughed. Okay, if you insist. She had been used to having a wage when she worked at the mill, and hadn't liked being dependent on Sam for everything, although he was very generous. I'll get started whenever you like, she said. And to change the subject, I've been wondering about Russell's birthday. He'll be 3 in a couple of weeks, and I think we should have a little party. Chapter 20. Sissy also found that she was missing her best friend. She and Val had not seen one another quite as much after they had both married and had their children. But Sissy had known that Val was always there, ready to listen and to offer advice if she was in trouble or anxious about something. They had been friends since they were 4 years old. They had lived in the same street of terraced houses near the centre of the town, and had started school together. It had soon become clear that Val was the cleverer of the two, probably because she applied herself more to her schoolwork and was keen to learn. When they were 11 years old, they moved to the secondary school. There was no possibility of either of them going to the grammar school. They were put into different forms, being graded according to ability. Sissy had feared that Val would make new friends and not want her any more. But her fears were unfounded. They had both made new friends in their different classes. Sissy was popular because of her devil-may-care attitude and her cheerfulness. But at the heart of her there was insecurity, and she and Val remained as close to one another as ever. They both left school at 15 and found employment at Walker's Mill. Val, after passing the required test, was offered a post in the office as a junior clerk. She soon proved that she was a conscientious worker and was not the one who always made the tea and ran errands for long. Sissy worked in the weaving shed and proved to be competent at the job, so much so that she was offered a place in the burling and mending room. This was where a team of women examined the finished cloth for faults and mended the mistakes as invisibly as possible. When their shifts coincided, the two girls would walk home together and go out in the evenings, usually to the local cinemas a couple of times a week.
In the August of 1955, they spent a holiday together in Blackpool. It had proved to be an eventful week. They had made a new friend, Janice Butler, who had been helping out as a waitress at the family hotel, which was run by her mother. And Val had met Samuel Walker in the Winter Gardens ballroom. Sam had not realized until Val had told him that she worked in the office at his father's mill, but that had not concerned him at all, and it had been more or less love at first sight for the pair of them. Cissy, though, had been anxious about the budding friendship, and, if she were honest, a little jealous and peeved at her friend hobnobbing with one of the bosses. She had warned Val that no good could come of it, and it would never work. She had been forced to eat her words, however, when the couple became engaged and then married. Cissy, in the end, had been happy for her friend. The four of them, Val and Sam and Cissy and Walter, had become firm friends. The girls had been bridesmaids for one another and godmother to the children that had followed. And then, suddenly, Val was no longer there. Admittedly, she was not 1,000 miles away, and they could keep in touch by phone. They were close enough to visit, too. They could easily travel there and back in a day. And that would be happening very soon. Val had phoned and invited them all to Russell's 3rd birthday party. One great thing, of course, had come out of Val and Sam's move to Harrogate. They had sold their house to Cissy and Walter. Never in a million years would Cissy have imagined she would ever live in the salubrious residential district of Queensbury. But here they were, she and Walter, living in a lovely semi-detached house at the top of the hill which led up from the town centre. There were wonderful views all around, and the air was fresher and cleaner up there. Sam had worked hard in the garden. Cissy knew he was regretful at leaving it, but Walter had promised to carry on the good work to the best of his ability. It was far larger than the garden they were leaving, which was more of a backyard with a tiny lawn and a simple flower bed. Here there were trees and shrubs, rose bushes, and what Val called an herbaceous border. There was even a summer house, which delighted the children as well as Cissy. She thought to herself, however, that their new home was in keeping with Walter's position at the mill. Since Sam's departure, he had been given more responsibility and a rise in pay. He was almost one of the bosses now, and Cissy was pleased and proud to tell people how well he was doing. So there were good things to counteract the sadness at losing her best friend. Cissy had other friends, of course. There was Megan, who had lived in the same street. Their little girls, Holly and Kelly, were good friends and went to playgroup together. Cissy had thought that this might have to end when they moved, and that Holly would go to a different playgroup nearer to their home. But Megan had agreed to take Holly and collect her each day, as she had always done. So Cissy travelled down to the town by bus each morning, left Holly at Megan's home, and collected her when she had finished her work at the market cafe. Cissy loved her job, and had no thought of giving it up and becoming a lady of leisure, even though her husband had become rather more than a mill hand. She had made new friends while working at the market, and had many a good laugh with the other waitresses. They helped to prepare the food and wash up, as well as waiting at the tables. And most of the customers were friendly and easy to please. Some of them came in each day at the same time, and Cissy had a good rapport with several of the regulars. But Cissy knew she would always think of Val as her special friend. She was looking forward to the coming Sunday, when they would be going to Harrogate for Russell's birthday party. Sunday was the only day on which the adults were free. It would be good to see Janice and Phil Grundy again as well. Val and Sam's new home was not too far from Grundy's, and Cissy guessed that Val and Janice would be able to see one another quite regularly. She could not help but feel rather jealous at the thought of the two of them becoming more friendly. No, maybe jealous was too strong a word. So, what exactly did she feel? She recalled the time when she and Val had moved to the secondary school and been put into different classes. Sissy had worried then that these new girls Val was meeting, cleverer girls than Sissy was, might lure Val away from her, but this had not happened, nor would it happen now. Sissy told herself not to be silly and to look forward to Sunday, when she would be seeing both her friends again. Val had suggested that they should have just a small party to celebrate Russell's 3rd birthday, but she ended up with what amounted to a houseful. Sam had reminded her that it could not be just for the children. Their parents would need to be invited as well. "Yes, I know that," she'd replied. "Obviously the children can't come on their own, but we don't need to invite your parents or mine. It would not be your mother's cup of tea at all to be in the midst of so many children, and my mother would prefer to be just with her own grandchildren. They can come another time. But we must invite Jonathan and Thelma and Rosemary. The ones from Halifax won't need to stay overnight. It will be just a tea-time party." When they counted up, there would be 17 in all, more adults than children. Colin and Carol and 2-year-old Seamus were invited. Russell and Seamus had met and had got along as well as little boys could be expected to do. "Can you cope with so many?" asked Sam. "Of course I can," Val replied. "It will only be a bun fight. Well, not literally, I hope, but you know what I mean. Sandwiches and buns and jelly and ice cream. Things that kiddies like. I'm not doing a special meal for the parents, but there'll be beer and wine if they want it. It won't be up to Janice and Phil's standard, but I don't think anyone will mind." They had decided on a Sunday, not Russell's actual birth date, but a day that was more convenient for the parents, especially Janice and Phil, who would have a rest from catering. It turned out to be a jolly occasion, with all the children, even Russell, behaving well. The children sat around the tea table, with cushions on chairs if necessary, and Lucy, the youngest, in her high chair. The adults balanced their cups and plates on their knees, getting up when they were needed to lend a hand. It was the sort of party any 3-year-old could wish for. Salmon paste, egg and potted meat sandwiches, minus the crusts for a special occasion. Sausage rolls, crisps, iced buns and jelly, red, of course, with ice cream. There was a birthday cake with 3 candles and "Happy Birthday, Russell," piped in red icing sugar. And if it was a trifle wobbly, no one commented. Russell seemed to know what was expected of him and puffed out his cheeks for a good blow at the candles, while everyone sang "Happy Birthday to You." Only 3 of the children, Paul, Holly and Rosemary, who went to school or playgroup, were old enough to understand party games, so they sang songs instead, nursery rhymes and jingles that the older ones had learnt at school. The men then volunteered to amuse the children in the garden with a game of football. This was Russell's latest craze, since his daddy had brought the football home. For his birthday, Val and Sam had bought him a red jersey and white shorts, like the men on the television wore, and a pair of football boots, not heavy enough to do any damage, all of which he had insisted on wearing for his party. The 2 younger girls, Sarah and Lucy, stayed inside with the women, who were tackling the washing up. The shouts of delight coming from the garden indicated that the men and the older children were having a good time. The 5 women enjoyed chatting together. Carol was the only one who was a comparative stranger to everyone but Val. She was soon joining in the general chatter, though, about husbands and children and the problems of settling into a new home. Val overheard a conversation between Sissy and Carol and smiled to herself.
Of course, Val and I have known one another forever, Sissy told her new acquaintance, ever since we started school together. And now we've bought the house they had up at Queensbury. My husband Walter has taken over a lot of the work that Sam used to do at the mill. Yes, I go out to work as well, she went on in answer to one of Carol's questions. I don't really need to, but I have a nice little job at the Market Cafe, and I love it.
She heard Thelma confiding to Janice something that she and Sam already knew.
Jonathan and I are expecting another baby in February. Rosemary is 5 now, so it's about time, really, isn't it?
And Janice remarked to Sissy that she didn't really see all that much of Val.
No, we don't meet very often, even though we live quite near. I'm working at the cafe a lot of the time, and Val's kept busy with Russell and Lucy and the work she's doing for the shop. But it's good that the 3 of us are all together again today. That was a smashing week we had together in Blackpool, wasn't it? I'm sure it was fate, you know, the way we all met. I often think about it, how I met Phil and Val met Sam, and you went back and married Walter.
Chapter 21. Sissy was reminded forcibly of that week in Blackpool a few days later. It was around 11 o'clock on Wednesday morning, one of their busiest times of day, although there was scarcely a time when they were really quiet. Women who were shopping often stopped for a cup of tea or coffee and maybe a bun mid-morning before walking or taking the bus home. It wasn't often that men were there at that time. Workmen came later for a spot of lunch before starting their afternoon shift. There was a young man sitting on his own at a corner table now, though. Sissy glanced in his direction as he studied the menu. She was just making her way to his table when he looked up, and she stopped dead in her tracks. Was it him? No, surely not. After all this time. How long was it? 6 years? But there was no mistaking that shock of unruly fair hair and round face. At that moment he looked across at her, and their eyes met. Her heart gave a jolt. Those bright blue eyes that she remembered so well, although she hadn't given him a thought for a long time, but there was no doubt about it. It was Jack Broadbent, the young man she had met in Blackpool in 1955. She could see the look of puzzlement in his eyes change to one of recognition. And what else could she do but walk towards him? "Hello, Jack," she said quietly and in a matter-of-fact tone, not smiling at him.
Sissy! It is Sissy, isn't it?
She nodded. "Yes. Long time no see, Jack."
Yes, I meant to get in touch, but then, well, all kinds of things happened. You're working here, then?
"Yes, just a part-time job. What can I get for you?"
"A cup of tea, please, and a scone with butter and jam."
"Okay, coming up."
She walked away, feeling strangely light-headed, remembering the last time they had met and what had happened on the promenade before she had left him to go back to her boarding house in a taxi. At least he had given her the fare, she recalled. She was soon back with his order.
"Stay and chat to me,"
he said, pointing to the chair next to him. "I can't, Jack. I'm working. We're not supposed to sit and chat to the customers."
"What time do you finish, then?"
1 o'clock, but I have to go and collect my little girl."
"Oh, you've got a daughter?"
"Yes, and a son. It's been a long time, Jack."
Will you meet me when you finish tomorrow, then? I'll come in a bit later, then we can have a cup of tea together and catch up, eh? I'm in this area all week."
She didn't ask what his job was. A driver of some sort, she supposed, although he had used to work in a mill in Bradford.
"OK, then,"
she said, but not with a great show of enthusiasm. Then she saw his blue eyes twinkle, and the lopsided grin that she now recalled so well. He had been such a charmer, and she had been unable to resist him. She had no intention of getting involved with him again, though, but he did owe her an explanation for not getting in touch, as he had said he would.
"Tomorrow, then,"
she said as casually as she could.
1 o'clock, when I finish. OK? OK. See you then, sissy.
There were other customers waiting to be served, and she did not go near his table again. Then she saw him pay his bill and walk away. She felt jittery and unsettled for the rest of the day, so much so that Walter asked her that evening if there was anything troubling her.
"No, of course not," she replied. "We were busy at the cafe today, and I was a bit harassed because I kept wondering how Paul was going on at school."
It would not have been practical for Paul to continue at his former school in Halifax, so he had started on Monday at the one in Queensbury, which was not very far from where they now lived. Walter dropped him off on his way to work each day, and Cissy collected him at the end of the afternoon. What Cissy had said was partly true. Paul had not been too happy for the first couple of days. Although he was an adaptable little boy and made friends easily, it had all been new and strange to him. He missed his old friends, and the children at the new school all knew one another. Today, though, when she had met him, he had seemed happier. The boy he sat next to in class had invited him to join in their game at playtime. Just kicking a football around with no particular rules, but he had enjoyed it. The way they did sums, though, was different, and he hadn't quite got the hang of it. The reading books were also different from the ones he had had before.
"He's settling down fine," Walter said now. "Don't worry about him. He'll soon get used to it all. Didn't he tell you he's got a new friend, Lee, who sits next to him?"
Yes, he did tell me. I'm OK, Walter, honest I am. It's all different, though, isn't it? And we've still not got the house straight, have we?
Never mind. It'll get done sometime. You want to carry on with your job at the market, do you? You don't have to, you know.
No, I want to do it, Walter. I really enjoy it, and I've got a lot of friends there.
That's OK, then.
He settled down again behind the evening paper. Cissy pretended to read her Woman's Own, but her mind was wandering. And a little later, when Walter switched on the television for their favourite police drama, she was only half watching. Ever since that morning, she had been remembering her first meeting with Jack Broadbent. She had not met him at the Winter Gardens, on the night that Val had met Sam and Janice had met Phil. It had been a few days later at the Tower Ballroom. Jack had asked her to dance, and they soon discovered that they had quite a lot in common, including their happy-go-lucky approach to life. They'd realised at once, of course, that they were both from Yorkshire. He'd told her that he worked at a mill, as she did, in his hometown of Bradford. Cissy had felt pleased that she had met someone, as both of her friends had done, and had not hesitated to spend the rest of the evening with him, enjoying the delights that the Tower had to offer. There'd been a lot to do, as well as dancing in the ballroom to the music of Reginald Dixon on the organ. They'd had a drink at one of the many bars, went to see the animals in the small menagerie and the fish in the aquarium. Jack had then seen her back to her hotel, when she'd realised she must put a stop to his over-amorous caresses. After all, they had only just met. She did agree, however, to meet him again later in the week and spend the day with him. She remembered that they had gone to the fishing port of Fleetwood, along the coast from Blackpool. It had been a pleasant ride on a tramcar, past the rows and rows of hotels and the man-made cliffs that reached down to the sea. There had been an aroma of fish in the air at Fleetwood, and a brisk breeze blowing in from the sea as they strolled along the promenade. They had enjoyed a hearty meal of crispy battered fish and chips at a cafe, then had a trip on the ferry boat across the estuary of the River Wyre to a little place called Knot End. There had been nothing to do there. It really was like the end of the world. But she had been happy and relaxed in Jack's company. When they'd arrived back in Blackpool, they went their separate ways for their evening meal at their respective boarding houses. Jack had begged her to spend the evening with him as well, and after only a moment's hesitation, she had agreed. She'd hoped that Val might be seeing Sam that evening, as she had already spent the day with him. Yes, it turned out that it was so, and Sissy did not need to feel guilty about making her own plans. She remembered how Val had warned her to watch herself with Jack, and she, Sissy, had replied that she could take care of herself and there was no need to worry. She had met Jack later that evening by North Pier, and they had gone to the Tivoli cinema to see Marilyn Monroe in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Afterwards, they went to the nearby Yates's Wine Lodge. Sissy had been in a mellow mood after her first gin and lime, and after 2 more of the same, she'd felt so carefree that she'd scarcely known what was happening. Nor had she cared. She was with Jack. He was jolly good company, and she was enjoying herself. They'd strolled across the tram track, then wandered down to the lower promenade. There had been a series of secluded colonnades, away from the busy main promenade, although the clang of the trams could be heard in the distance. Jack had been surprisingly gentle with her, so much so that she had gone along with his love-making without demur. It all seemed unreal, almost like a dream, and it was only later that she began to realize what had happened. "I must be getting back," she'd said eventually, and Jack saw her into a taxi at Talbot Square, with instructions to the driver to see her safely back to her boarding house. He'd given the driver some money, then kissed her cheek and said, "I'll be seeing you soon." They had already exchanged details of one another's whereabouts earlier in the evening. At least she had scribbled her address on a scrap of paper, and Jack had shoved it into his pocket. He had given her a phone number, explaining that they had a phone not because they were posh, but because his father was an odd-job man, and people had to be able to get in touch with him. The next morning, Sissy had woken up to reality. What on earth had she done? How could she have been such a silly little fool? She had felt ashamed, but knew she could not keep it to herself. She had to tell Val. It had been later that morning, when they were on the sands sunbathing, or trying to, in the fitful sunshine, that she'd told her friend what had happened. She'd been able to tell that Val was surprised, even shocked, but she had not condemned her. She hadn't said, "I told you to watch him," or told her that she'd been stupid. Val had tried to make light of it, saying that it wasn't possible to get pregnant the first time it happened, something that they both knew was not strictly true, but more of a common fallacy. "But supposing I am," Sissy had said, "I might not know for ages. You know what I'm like with my periods." Yes, Val remembered that her friend was very irregular. She could go 2 months or more without a period, but her doctor had said not to worry. It would sort itself out in time. "And I had one just before we came away, so it might be too late before I find out." Sissy had been worried.
Oh, crikey, what am I going to do?
Will you be seeing him again, this Jack?
Yes, he's got my address, and he gave me a phone number, Sissy had said, without much conviction.
Well, there you are then. Don't let it spoil the rest of your holiday. We're having a smashing time, aren't we? It had cast a shadow over the rest of the week, though, for Sissy at least. They had come back to reality on the Monday, when they were home again and starting work. Val had her budding friendship with Sam to look forward to, but Sissy had been frantic with worry. After a few days, when there had been no word from Jack, and she'd known, deep down, that it wasn't likely, she decided to ring the number he had given her. It had not been a great surprise to her when she'd found there was no such number. Things had sorted themselves out in time, however. She met Jack, as arranged, in the cafe the following day. She had been in two minds whether or not to agree to see him, but he had seemed keen to meet her, and he did owe her an explanation. He was there at the same corner table at 10 minutes to 1, and when she had finished her shift, she sat down opposite him.
"What are you having?" he asked. "My treat. I'm having a ham sandwich and a cup of tea."
"I'll have the same then," she replied. "They're as good as anything we do. I won't need to have anything when I get home. My friend's giving my little girl her lunch, 'cause I said I'd be a bit later today."
"How old is your daughter then?"
"She'll be 4 at Christmas. She's called Holly. She goes to playgroup, and I collect her when I've finished here."
"Jolly good. Did you say you had a boy and all?"
"Yes, a little boy called Paul. He's 5 and a bit."
"Gosh, you didn't waste much time then. I see you're married," he added, looking at her wedding ring.
"Of course. And you?"
No, not me. I'm still as free as a bird."
He motioned to the waitress and gave her their order. Daphne winked at Sissy, who had felt obliged to tell her fellow waitress that she was meeting a friend. "A mate of Walter's," she had lied, not wanting her friend to think she was up to something. There was a short silence before Jack spoke again.
"I'm sorry, that I didn't get in touch with you. To be honest, I lost your address. It were on a bit of paper, and it must have come out of me pocket with me hanky or summat. And you weren't on the phone."
"No, but you said you were, Jack, or your dad was any road. I rang, but there was no answer. It made a funny noise as though it wasn't a proper number."
"Well, it was, I can tell you. Happen you dialed it wrong."
"I don't think so."
"Well, happen I wrote it down wrong. One digit can make all the difference, and I wrote it in a hurry. Well, ne'er mind, eh? You're here now. It's good to see you again, Sissy."
She did not say, "and you too," unsure of how she was feeling. She didn't think she believed his story. "So you're not in the same job, Jack?" she asked as they started to eat their sandwiches. "You used to work at the mill, didn't you?"
"Aye, so I did. But I were made redundant about a year ago. A sign of the times. Things are not what they were in the woolen trade, but I reckon you know that. You worked at the mill and all, didn't you?"
"Yes, but I finished when I got married. It's the same at Walker's now. The orders are not coming in like they used to. But it worked out quite well for my husband and me. Walter, that's my husband, was the chief overseer. But he's been promoted, and he's one of the managers now." Sissy knew this was not strictly true, but it sounded good, and Walter was thought so highly of now that it was quite possible that he would be one day.
probably remember Sam," she went on. "The mill owner's son. He got friendly with my friend Val when we were in Blackpool. Well, Val and Sam got married and went to live in Queensbury. But Sam decided not so long ago to get out and do something else. Like you said, the times are changing. Sam's got a sports shop in Harrogate now, and Walter has stepped into his shoes at the mill." "I see. You've done well for yourself, haven't you?" "Yes, I suppose I have." Sissy could not help her smile of satisfaction. "We live up at Queensbury now. We bought Sam and Val's house. There's a lot more room there and a big garden." "So you're not exactly working to make ends meet, not if you're married to one of the bosses." "No, I do it because I enjoy it. Both the kids are at school. Well, playgroup for Holly, like I said. I've not seen you in here before, Jack. What brings you to this neck of the woods?" "I'm a driver for one of them mills that's gone on to synthetic fibres. I've only been with them for 3 weeks, and it's the first time I've been in this area. I go all over Yorkshire and Lancashire, and into Cheshire and all. I was with a haulage firm before, but I didn't care for the long distances. I like to get back to my own bed at night." Sissy had already learnt that he was not married. Whether he shared his bed or not was another matter. He was looking at her keenly, half smiling, and somewhat discomforted, she looked away. "I must say you're looking well, Sissy," he remarked. "Married life must suit you. You didn't say out about having a fella, though, when I met you in Blackpool." "Well, I didn't tell you everything, did I? But Walter was my boyfriend." "When did you get married, then?" "Oh, later that year. November." "And your little lad's 5. When were he born?" "What's it got to do with you?" "OK, so Walter and me might have jumped the gun a bit, so what? It's not a crime, is it? We're very happy, me and Walter." "I'm glad to hear it. It's just that you didn't say out about him." "No, well, I was on holiday with a friend, and he'd gone off cycling with his club. But we'd been going out for ages, and it was time we got married." "These sandwiches are good," said Jack, adding a little more mustard. "I shall come here again. Like I was saying, I'm in this area all week. How about meeting me again, eh?" "Oh, I don't know about that, Jack." "Why not? Just for a friendly chat, like. We could drive a bit further out and have a drink. I'm really sorry I couldn't get in touch with you. I want to make up for it." "I told you, I have to pick up my little girl." "Just for an hour or so. Your friend won't mind, will she?" No. She sometimes has her a bit longer when I go shopping." Jack was smiling at her, and she found herself remembering the fun they had had that time they went to Fleetwood. Walter wasn't much fun lately. He was taking his new responsibilities very seriously. And what harm could it do? She would make it clear that it was just for a drink together and nothing else. "OK then," she said. "That would be nice." "Jolly good. Shall we say next Friday? I'll meet you outside the market at 1 o'clock. I'll be off now. I've a few more calls to do before I head back home. Bye for now, Sissy." Was she being a fool? She asked herself. Perhaps she was, but it would be the very last time she saw him. Sissy hated lying. It was not one of her failings, but this time it was necessary. When she collected Holly, she told her friend, Megan, that she had a dental appointment on Friday that she had only just remembered.
She wouldn't breathe a word to anyone about Jack, not even Val. She could imagine what Val would say. Chapter 22. As Jack Broadbent drove back to his poky flat in Bradford at the end of the day, his mind was buzzing with all that Sissy had told him. It had been good to see her again, although he had not thought about her for years. He remembered she had been a jolly, good-natured girl, and she was still a good looker. They'd had fun together, but it had only been a holiday fling, and he'd had no intention of seeing her again, despite what he had said. He had hoped that she would forget about him and carry on with the life she had in Halifax. He knew he might have gone a bit too far, but they had both had too much to drink. She was a pretty lass, and she had not seemed unwilling. It had come as a shock to him, though, that it must have been the first time for her. He had thought, rather, that she might have been around quite a bit. He had felt somewhat guilty afterwards, and had seen her into a taxi and safely on her way home. His mind was busy now, though. She had a little lad, 5 years old, and she said she'd got married in November, 3 months after their meeting in Blackpool. And the kid had been born. When? She hadn't said exactly, only that he was 5. She'd been flustered, though, and had admitted that she and Walter might have jumped the gun. But what if the child had been his? Jack's? And what did her husband know about it? Not at all, he suspected. And she wouldn't want him to know either. He liked Sissy, and might have wanted to get friendly with her again, if the circumstances were right, but they weren't. She had a husband. Happen he could scare her a bit, though. Get her to part with some of that dosh she and her husband were earning. Big posh house in Queensbury, manager at the mill. She could afford a bob or two. He told her that he was not married. At least he had given that impression. But he had been married. He was divorced now, and his ex-wife was hounding him for maintenance for his 3-year-old son. He was a few weeks behind and living from week to week, almost from day to day. Yes, it was worth a try, and he was seeing her again on Friday. She was waiting for him outside the market, as they had arranged, looking very fetching in a bright red coat with lipstick to match. He would have to go gently with her at first, and not let her suspect anything. She was a nice lass, and he didn't want to do her any harm, but it was too good a chance to miss. She seemed pleased to see him, anxious to get in the van, though, and on their way. He drove out of the town and along the road towards Hebden Bridge, then stopped at a little wayside pub that he knew. She said she'd have a shandy, a sausage roll and a packet of crisps, when he insisted she must have something to eat. He had his usual pint of bitter and a meat pie. They were quite relaxed and chatted together as though they were friends, not as though there had been a period of 6 years since they last met. She told him about Janice, her other friend who had worked at the Blackpool Hotel and now ran a thriving restaurant with her husband. She met Phil that week and all, when Val met Sam. Jack grinned at her. And you met me? Yes, so I did. And you went back and married your boyfriend? Yes, I did, I told you. Walter and me had been going together for ages. But he didn't know you got friendly with me in Blackpool, did he? No, why should he? You keep quiet about some things, don't you? Then nobody gets hurt. Sissy was starting to feel alarmed. Jack had been nice and friendly, but there was a calculating gleam in his eye now that she didn't like. I've been doing some sums in me head, he said. That little lad of yours. When did you say his birthday was? I didn't say, but it was the 1st of June. Like I said, it were a bit too soon, but these things happen, don't they? He could be mine, couldn't he? Sissy's heart started to beat faster, and there was a panicky sensation in her chest.
Of course he's not yours.
She tried to laugh, but it sounded forced.
He's the image of Walter. I've got a photo of him. I'll show you. Paul looks like Walter, and Holly looks like me.
She rummaged in her bag and handed him a snapshot. It had been taken in the garden of the old house and showed a blonde-haired, chubby little girl and a dark-haired boy with rather more sharp features.
"Bonny kids," said Jack, "but that doesn't mean a thing. Kids are sometimes a throwback to a previous generation."
Sissy shook her head vehemently.
"He's Walter's. There's no doubt about it. Everybody says he's like his daddy." "Maybe they do, but Daddy wouldn't be pleased to know that his girlfriend had been playing around not long before they were wed, would he? And that his little lad might not be his."
"Stop it, Jack," she said.
"I know what we did, but it was wrong, and I want to forget about it." "I'm sure you do." He gave a wolfish grin. "But what is it worth? Happen a few quid, eh? I'm hard up, Sissy. I don't like to admit it, but I am. And you're living in the lap of luxury. Come on now, how about a tenner? That's not much."
£10? I haven't got £10, Jack. I don't carry much money around with me, and I don't earn all that much either."
"No, but your hubby does, and I'm sure he doesn't leave you short. I don't mind waiting. I'll be round here again next Friday. That'll give you plenty of time."
Sissy could feel tears threatening, and she tried to blink them back.
"I can't, Jack,"
she said, the words catching in her throat.
"Any road. Why do you need it? You've got a steady job and you said you weren't married." "Aye, but I was. And I've got an ex-wife and a little lad. She'll have me up in court soon if I don't cough up with what I owe her. Come on now, Sissy. It's just between you and me, and I won't say out."
She could feel her hands trembling, and she clenched them tightly together. Walter must never find out what she'd done, how she'd tricked him into marrying her. He'd never forgive her. She knew she had to give Jack the money to keep him off her back. End of CD 8. CD 9.
"I'll have to go now, Jack,"
she said, as composed as she could manage.
"I've to pick Holly up and then collect Paul from school." "Okie doke," he said cheerfully. "Let's get going then."
They spoke very little on the way back, as Jack sped along the country road. He stopped near the market where he had picked her up.
"Same time next Friday then," he said. "Remember what I've said. I'll say nowt if you do as I say. You've a hell of a lot to lose, Sissy."
"All right, Jack. I'll see you then." She opened the van door and stepped out onto the pavement. He grinned.
"Good girl, you know it makes sense. Ta-ra, Sissy."
He drove off at top speed, as she stood forlornly staring at the disappearing van. She remembered then that she was supposed to have been to the dentist, and she hurried off to Megan's house.
"You look a bit worse for wear," said her friend. "Was it awful?"
"Not too bad, really, I suppose," lied Sissy. "Only a filling, but I hate going to the dentist. Come on, Holly, love. Say bye-bye to Kelly. Thanks for looking after her, Megan." They took a bus back home. Then it was time to collect Paul. Sissy tried to calm down, helped by a cigarette and a tot of brandy, before Walter came home. But what on earth was she to do? She decided almost straight away that she would do what she always did when she was in a dilemma. She would ring her best friend. And there was no time like the present. She would ring Val at once. Paul and Holly were watching a children's program on the television. It would be almost 2 hours before Walter came home. She crossed her fingers that Val would be there as she picked up the phone in the hall and dialed the number. Val answered almost at once.
Hello, Val. It's me, Sissy. Have you time to talk?
Of course I have. What's the matter, Sissy? You sound a bit strange. What is it?
Oh, Val, I'm in the most awful trouble. Do you remember Jack Broadbent?
There was a pause. Then Val said, Do you mean the lad you met in Blackpool? Oh, Sissy, don't say...
Yes, he's turned up again. I never thought I'd see him again. I'd forgotten all about him. Well, nearly. And then there he was in the market.
Go on, said Val. Tell me what's happened. So Sissy told her friend how they'd got chatting, and she'd had a cup of tea with him, and he'd seemed okay, quite friendly-like, and how she'd agreed to go for a drink with him today.
He turned nasty, Val. Not violent or out like that, but he's been putting 2 and 2 together, and he asked if Paul was his child. I told him no, of course he isn't. He's Walter's. He's the image of him, and I showed him a photo. But he still said that Walter wouldn't want to know what I'd been up to in Blackpool.
So he's blackmailing you?
Well, I suppose he is, really. He says I have to give him £10 next week, or else he'll tell Walter that Paul might not be his son. But he is Walter's. I know that, Val, and so do you, and so does everybody.
Yes, we do now. But you remember the time when you were not sure who the father of your child might be. You didn't know until he was born, did you? Sissy, indeed, had been in a quandary following her escapade in Blackpool. Her periods were irregular, and she hadn't known for ages that she was pregnant. And Walter had been there, still wanting her to do what she had refused to go along with so many times. But she had known then that this was the solution to her problem. If she did what he wanted, then she would be able to say that the child was his if she did happen to be pregnant. Walter could scarcely believe her change of heart, and in due course, Sissy knew that she was indeed pregnant. They had married in haste, and she had waited on tenterhooks to see who the child resembled. When Paul was born, there was no doubt about it. He was Walter's. The same nose, the same dark hair, the image of his daddy. And Walter had known nothing about her misdemeanour. You mustn't give in to Jack, said Val. This wouldn't be the last of it, believe me. The next time he'd want more money. That's what blackmailers do. You must tell Walter what has happened.
Tell Walter? Cried Sissy. Tell him that I tricked him into getting married. He'd never forgive me. He'd leave me. He'd take the children.
Don't start panicking, Sissy, said her friend. I don't think for one moment that would happen. Maybe you don't need to tell Walter everything.
What do you mean?
Well, when you met Jack in Blackpool, you weren't engaged to Walter, were you?
No, I couldn't make up my mind about him. I was getting a bit fed up, I suppose, and he was going off cycling with his mates. So we decided to go on holiday, didn't we? Just you and me.
Well then, I don't suppose you were doing much wrong, were you, spending some time with Jack? It wasn't as if you'd promised to marry Walter.
No, I see what you mean. Happen I could tell Walter that I'd met this lad in Blackpool, and we got friendly like. I shan't tell him what happened, though, and now he's turned up again. I'll tell Walter that he's threatening me, that he'll tell him we got friendly like if I don't give him some money. Do you think Walter might swallow that? I don't want to say out about Jack thinking Paul might be his.
No, don't mention that. But you have to tell him something. Like you said, though, there was no understanding between you and Walter. You just had a bit of a fling in Blackpool. You know that Walter loves you. And he's not always been a saint, has he? You remember that little incident with the girl in the cycling club?
Oh, yes, course I do. And that was after we'd had the children. It would be the pot calling the kettle black, wouldn't it, if he started making a fuss?
Make him an iced tea, Sissy. Then tell him you've got a problem. And try to keep calm.
OK, I'll try. I'll tell him tonight before I have time to change my mind. Thanks for listening, Val. I don't know what I'd do without you. I do miss you, you know.
And I miss you too. We'll meet up again soon.
Bye then, Val. I'll let you know what happens. Keep your fingers crossed for me.
Will do. Bye, Sissy. A nice meal for Walter. She hadn't done any shopping because she'd been too worried about the meeting with Jack. What had she got in the fridge? There was bacon, sausages and eggs, and a tin of beans in the cupboard. Walter liked to fry up, and she could make some chips. And there was a couple of small apple tarts from the market cafe. She would get the kids' tea sorted out earlier. Then she could spend some time with Walter on his own. He was home soon after 6, and the meal was ready.
"Something smells good," he said, sounding in a good mood.
"Just to fry up," said Sissy. "I know you like that."
"So long as you've got some HP sauce."
He tucked into his meal and did not seem to notice that she had a small portion. When he had drunk a second cup of tea, Sissy decided she could not wait any longer.
"Walter,"
she began,
"I've got something to tell you."
He looked at her serious face.
"What is it, love? Not bad news?"
"No, not really. Just something bothering me."
"You're not pregnant, are you?"
He looked surprised, possibly a little alarmed, before going on.
"Well, that's nothing to worry about, is it?"
"No, Walter, I'm not pregnant. It's something that happened a good while ago. Do you remember that time when me and Val went to Blackpool?"
"And she got friendly with Sam. Yes, I remember that."
"Well, I met a young chap and all. A lad from Bradford. He was called Jack. And we got friendly. It was only a holiday thing, Walter, 'cause Val was with Sam and I was on my own."
That wasn't strictly true, but it might make it sound more understandable. Walter was regarding her steadily, not smiling, as she went on.
"So I danced with him like at the Tower, and then I went to Fleetwood with him one day, and to the pictures. And that was all. I never thought I'd see him again. We never said we'd meet. And it's 6 years ago, Walter."
"So, what are you trying to tell me, Sissy?"
"Well, he came into the market the other day. He didn't know I worked there, and I'd forgotten all about him. But we knew one another, and we got talking."
She paused, looking at him speculatively. He was very quiet.
"Go on, Sissy," he said.
She decided not to tell him that she'd gone for a drink with him.
"Well, we were chatting, like, and I suppose I might have been showing off a bit. I said that you'd got a good job at Walker's. I might have hinted that you're one of the bosses."
She saw Walter give a wry smile.
"And I said how we lived in a posh house at Queensbury. I wanted him to see how well we've done, Walter. And then he told me he was hard up, that he's got an ex-wife and a kid, and he owes her some money, and she'll have him up in court. I suppose he thought it was too good a chance to miss, meeting me. He said, I've got to give him some money. £10, he said. Or else he'll tell you about us being friendly like in Blackpool. He knows we're happy, you see, Walter, and he wants to spoil it all. So I thought I'd better tell you myself."
Her voice petered out.
"Did you give him any money, Sissy?"
"No, of course I didn't. He wants me to meet him next Friday."
"Don't worry. We'll sort it out."
Walter looked thoughtful.
"And you never saw him again after you'd met in Blackpool, not till just now?"
"No, I swear I didn't, Walter. Do you remember you'd gone off cycling that week, and I'd gone on holiday with Val? I didn't really know what I wanted. Then when I got back home, I realised I'd been messing you about for too long, and that we should be together properly like you wanted. It was good fun in Blackpool, but I didn't like it when I was standing around in the ballroom waiting for somebody to ask me to dance. That's why I got friendly with Jack. Then I knew I wanted a steady boyfriend. I wanted you, Walter."
He remained quiet for a moment, recalling how it had been when Sissy returned from the holiday. He had been surprised and delighted when she agreed that it was time that they cemented their relationship. He had loved her for ages, waiting for her to make up her mind, but she had seemed so lukewarm. Had she told him the full story? She had had a very sudden change of heart. It didn't matter, though. Their marriage was as solid as a rock now, and he didn't intend to let it be spoiled by some no-good scrounger.
"What's this fellow called?" he asked. "Jack?"
"Jack Broadbent," replied Sissy.
"What does he look like?"
"He's about as tall as you, and about the same age. Fair hair, sort of scruffy, not dirty, just needing a comb. Round face and... oh, I don't know, just an ordinary chap."
"And where did you say you'd meet him?"
"I didn't say I would. I never promised. But he said he'd be outside the market, the main entrance, next Friday at 1 o'clock.
"Right. I shall be there then. He'll get a shock when he sees me, won't he?"
"Oh no, Walter, I don't want any trouble."
"What else can we do? If you don't turn up and he does what he's threatening, I don't want him looking for me at the mill, do I? This is our business, Sissy, just yours and mine, and I'm going to deal with it."
Sissy realised it was pointless to say any more. At least Walter had taken it quite well, much better than she had feared. As for Walter, he was a mite suspicious, but he wanted to give Sissy the benefit of the doubt. Val would know what had gone on. She and his wife were as thick as thieves, so there was no point in him quizzing her. He would turn up next Friday and scare the pants off this bloke. They said no more about it over the next week. Sissy was subdued, unlike her normal self, and Walter knew she was worried. Sissy, indeed, was wondering what might happen if Jack turned up. It would be dreadful if it turned into a fight, but she knew that Walter was not aggressive, and neither, she believed, was Jack. She guessed that he was really all bluff and bluster. When Walter arrived at the appointed place, He was rather surprised to see that the fellow was there. He had thought it might be an idle threat. Walter approached him.
"Are you Jack Broadbent?"
Jack looked at him, a grin on his face, and a curious look in his eyes. Walter could tell that he might be quite a charmer.
"The very same," he replied. "And you are?" "I'm Walter Clarkson, Sissy's husband. She couldn't make it today, so I'm here instead. And all I have to say to you is get the hell out of here, or I'll tell the police about your little game." "Hey, steady on now," said Jack, raising his hands. "I never meant no harm. I'm a bit hard up, that's all. And I thought there were one or two things that your lovely wife might not want you to know." "Sissy's told me everything," said Walter, "and I trust her. So you'd best clear off, Jack Broadbent."
Walter felt in his pocket, brought out a £10 note, and handed it to him.
"This is what you came for, and this is the last you'll get. I'm sorry for your problems, and I realise how lucky I am. I've got a good job and a nice house, and I've got Sissy. So just leave my wife alone."
Jack grinned.
"Well, it was worth a try. Thanks, mate."
He pocketed the money and made to walk away. Then he turned back.
"But have you never thought that that little lad of yours might be mine?"
Walter laughed out loud.
"No way! He's the image of me. Now, scram!"
Jack shrugged his shoulders and walked away. That was one thing of which Walter was very sure. Paul was his son, a real chip off the old block. He recalled, though, that he and Sissy had got married in a hurry, and what a fuss Sissy's mother had made, insisting that her daughter must be married in pale blue and not virginal white. Had she tricked him, or had she really decided that she loved him, and that it was he, Walter, that she wanted? He could question her, try to get to the truth. But was it worth it? As he had told Jack, they had a nice home and enough money to be very comfortable. They had 2 lovely children, and he knew that Sissy loved him as much as he loved her. What more could he want? Chapter 23. Val was feeling much more contented now, as summer changed gradually to autumn. She was happily occupied with the work she was doing for the store, bookkeeping and ordering, and helping Sam with new ideas. The shop was doing well, and Sam and Colin had no reason to think that they might have taken on too much. It had been a leap into the unknown, but all seemed to be going according to plan. Christmas was not all that far away, and stores of all kinds had to start thinking early of new ideas to attract the customers.
"It will soon be time to think about changing the window displays," Sam told Val. "But that's largely Carol's province. We thought we might have a snowy scene as the background. Not just yet, though. Better to wait until Halloween and bonfire night are out of the way."
"It's difficult to play games in the snow, though," said Val, not very helpfully. "It's a nice idea, and Carol will make a lovely background. But to what?"
"A bit of snow and ice doesn't put hikers and climbers off," said Sam. "We'll order more winter clothing and a range of bright woolen caps and scarves. It'll be time for winter sports as well, skiing and skating. Some of the more affluent folk fly off to Switzerland or Austria. I'm not suggesting we stock skis or skates. I know they often hire them. But a backdrop of snow-clad mountains will be a talking point. Lots of people have commented on our window displays."
And it's the football season as well, said Val. I've got an idea. You know how Russell loves his little jersey and shorts? He'd wear them all the time if I'd let him. Well, what about a range of football shirts for children of all ages, from Russell's age up to, say, 11 or 12? And they could be red or blue or black and white, depending on which team they support. I know you can buy that sort of thing at the chain stores, but this might be more authentic. Brilliant idea, said Sam. Catering for children as well as adults. And what about a range of supporters' scarves in the various colours? Could you take charge of all that, Val, love? Ring round a few suppliers and see what they come up with. Yes, I'd love to, she replied. Things were going well for Val. Russell had started at another playgroup, not very far from their home. And this time it was proving to be a success. She realised he might have been too young the first time, but now he had settled down very well and was enjoying it immensely. When she collected him, he was always full of tales of what they had been doing. There was a dressing-up box, and they could play at being fairies or witches for the girls, or postmen, policemen, firemen or engine drivers. There was an engine big enough to sit in, building blocks, water and a sand tray. Val hoped he had learned to behave himself in the sand. He was now drinking his milk without making a fuss, and the helpers said he was no trouble at all. They listened to stories and learned lots of rhymes and jingles. He could count up to 10 and loved reciting the jingles about 5 little froggies or 10 little mice. There was a toy telephone for imaginative play and to help them to learn the numbers. He became fascinated by the telephone at home, and Val explained to him that it was not a toy and he mustn't play around with it. She did allow him, however, to dial his Gran's number, her own mother, not Sam's, and speak to her. You dial 9 3 times, 999, to ring the policeman, Mummy, he told her, or to get an ambulance if somebody is poorly. Yes, that's right, love, she said. But don't do it here, there's a good boy. We don't need a policeman, and nobody's poorly. She was pleased, though, at the way he was learning basic facts, like saying his address and birth date, and recognizing his own name from a card. He seemed to have a very good memory. Val had been relieved when Sissy phoned to say that the problem with Jack had been solved, that Walter had gone to meet him instead of Sissy and sent him packing. Walter was really nice about it, Sissy told her friend. I thought he'd go mad and want to know what I'd got up to in Blackpool. I don't know if he suspected that I'd, done that with Jack, but he didn't ask, thank goodness. Any road, from what I can gather, he sent him off with a flea in his ear. He gave him the £10, though, to get rid of him. He said, Walter, I mean, that he felt sorry for him, seeing that he was down on his luck, and we've got everything we want, a nice home and a family, and we're very happy and all. You're lucky you came out of it so well, said Val. You'd better be on your best behaviour now, mind your P's and Q's. Oh, I shall, don't worry. I've learnt my lesson. Now, tell me how you're going on with the shop, and Russell and little Lucy. Sissy was certainly being a model wife. Walter could scarcely believe the change in her. She was even-tempered and agreeable, doing all she could to please him. He knew that a great weight had been lifted from her mind. He told himself that there was no point in worrying about what had gone on in Blackpool. He had ended up with Sissy, whom he had always loved,
despite her frivolity and occasional truculence. She was a handful at times, but she was his wife, for better or worse. And as far as he was concerned, life at that moment could not be better. The nights were longer, the days shorter, and the weather was turning colder. Curtains were drawn by 5 o'clock, as families settled down for a cosy evening by the fire with the radio or television or a good book. It was also the time for partying and merrymaking for those who were so inclined. And the Changing Seasons venue at Grundy's was doing well, better than Phil and Janice had dared to hope. They put on special meals for Halloween and bonfire night, including pumpkin soup, Lancashire hot pot with tender lamb chops, traditional roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, bangers and mash, toad in the hole, treacle tart, ginger pudding and parkin, served as a pudding with fresh cream. They were planning a special Christmas meal for each evening of the week before Christmas. And by the beginning of December, this was booking up quickly. Christmas Day would be on a Monday, and as they always closed on Sunday, they intended to take a longish break and reopen on the 28th of December. They knew they would be glad of a rest when they closed on the 23rd of December and began preparing for their own Christmas celebrations. All was going well at Walker and Wyatt Sports Gear. The scene of snow-clad mountains with fir trees and skiers was a draw for window shoppers from early December. And not just for window shoppers. Many came in to choose items of clothing for husbands and wives, sons and daughters who were keen fell walkers or climbers. Or there were those who just liked something bright to wear during the winter, fleecy-lined jackets, colourful anoraks, striped scarves, gaily patterned woolly hats and sweaters. There was something to suit every taste and every pocket. The football supporters' scarves were going well, as were the range of children's football strips. There was a run on boxed games too, Monopoly, Scrabble, drafts and chess sets, ranging from reasonably priced ones to more exclusive and expensive. Janice had bought one of these for her brother, who would be coming to help out again at Christmas. There were the ever-popular snakes and ladders, Ludo and Tiddlywinks, sets of playing cards, dartboards and dominoes. Val was a little concerned that they might be encroaching on the toy shops or the department stores, who sold similar products. But Sam assured her that all was fair in the retail trade, especially at Christmas. They would stay open quite late on Saturday the 23rd of December, the last shopping day, and then take 3 days' break. "It's my parents' turn to entertain us on Christmas Day," Val told her husband one evening in mid-December. "Mum would like us to stay overnight if possible. Or would that cause trouble with your parents? Well, your mother, I mean, if we don't stay with them." "I don't see why it should," said Sam. "Anyway, you know that a little of Russell goes a long way with my mother, although I think she's mellowing slightly towards him now. And they'll be busy entertaining Jonathan and Thelma and Rosemary on Christmas Day." "Yes, so they will. Thelma says she's feeling very tired with this pregnancy, far more than she was with Rosemary. Do you think she might be having twins?" "How should I know?" Sam laughed. "We can pop over and see them and my parents the Sunday before Christmas if you like. Just a flying visit to take the presents. Then we'll have a quiet Christmas Eve before we go to your parents on Christmas Day. Okay?" "Yes, that sounds fine. Perhaps we could call and see Sissy and Walter as well. And how do you feel about having your mum and dad here for New Year's Day? And to stay overnight, maybe? They've only been for the day so far, and I really think we should make the effort. Or will the shop be open?" "No, not on New Year's Day. Colin and I have decided to have 2 days' break.
Neither of us is keen on all this sales fever, though we have to go along with it to a certain extent. There's so much to learn about the retail trade, all sorts of things we knew very little about. For instance, as soon as we're into the new year, we shall have to start thinking about spring and summer sports, tennis and cricket, and then there's bowls for those who are rather more mature, women as well as men. "Let's get Christmas over first," said Val, "but I must admit I love thinking up new ideas. I get really engrossed in those sports catalogues, Sam. I never thought it would be so interesting." "And you're doing a grand job," said Sam. "I'm sure we made the right decision in coming here. Now, are you sure you want to cope with my mother and father at New Year?"
"Of course I am, especially as we won't be seeing them on Christmas Day. I don't think we'll have a turkey, though. Everyone will have had enough turkey by New Year. I'll think of something different, possibly a nice piece of pork loin."
"Dad likes roast beef and Yorkshire pudding," said Sam.
"I know he's a true Yorkshireman, but I think I'll do pork and sage and onion and apple sauce." "And what about the pudding?"
Sam laughed. "Don't worry about it now. You've plenty of time to sort it all out."
"Yes, so I have, but I want to get it just right. You know how critical your mother is. I always feel as though she's giving me marks out of 20.
"She's not as bad as she was. The last time I spoke to her on the phone, she said how much she was missing us all."
"Well, we'll make them very welcome. They'd better have our bedroom, and we'll share with the children. We really could do with a bigger house, Sam. Then we'd have a guest room."
"All in good time, love," he said. "We had to find somewhere quite quickly, you know, and this will do for us for a while."
Val imagined the same sort of conversation going on in households all over the country. Which parents do we see on Christmas Day this year, yours or mine? And what about Auntie Ethel? We can't leave her on her own. What shall we buy for your mother? We bought her a cashmere scarf last year, and I don't think she liked the colour.
We must think of something different for the menfolk, not socks and hankies again.
Val found it all exciting, though. She loved to see the first Christmas trees appearing in front windows, in shops and in the town square, the coloured lights along the strays shining out into the darkness, and the shop windows with tempting gifts for youngsters, and for those who were older. The window at Walker and Wyatt's was as attractive as any in the town, and Val was happy to be sharing in this new venture. Cissy and Walter were also discussing whose turn it was this year.
"We were with your parents last year, Walter," she told him. "Don't you remember the remark my mother made about the stuffing? Was it homemade indeed?"
"No, I can't say I do," replied Walter, "but I agree that it's your parents' turn this year."
Cissy grimaced.
"I shall have to lend a hand in the kitchen, or else Mum will play at being a martyr. And I bet her stuffing will be out of a packet and all."
Walter laughed.
"What a palaver it all is. Why don't we all go out to a restaurant and let somebody else do the cooking?"
"Because Christmas is the time for families to be together, or so they say," replied Cissy. "You stay at home and cook an enormous meal, turkey and sprouts and pudding, and there's crackers and fancy hats and the Queen's speech. Then the men fall asleep in front of the telly and the women do the washing up. Nobody ever thinks of going out on Christmas Day. The restaurants are closed any road. Janice and Phil wouldn't dream of opening on Christmas Day."
"Yes, I suppose so," said Walter. "And I reckon that's the way it'll always be. Frayed tempers and screaming kids, and you wish everybody had clear off home and leave you alone. But it's all jolly good fun, isn't it?"
Walter raised his eyebrows and looked heavenwards. Of course it is, said Sissy. The kids enjoy it, and I suppose that's all that matters. It's Holly's birthday and all. Can you believe she'll be 4 this year? Paul will be reminding us that it's Jesus' birthday on Christmas Day. He's a shepherd this year, our Paul. As Sissy had said, Grundy's was closed for the Christmas period. They reopened for a couple of days and evenings midweek, before closing again for the New Year period. There were plenty of hotels and bars in the vicinity where folks could do their merrymaking. Families such as theirs, with children to consider, usually celebrated the coming of the New Year more quietly in their own homes. And so it was with Janice and Phil. On New Year's Eve, however, they were pleased to have Val and Sam with them to enjoy supper together and to see in the new year. Sam's parents had travelled from Halifax on the last day of the old year and said they would be willing to babysit if Val and Sam wanted to go out. So they were able to accept their friend's invitation to join them for a quiet celebration. "So, how was your Christmas?" Val asked Janice and Phil, when they were all seated round the fire with a glass of sherry. "I expect you would be glad of the rest when the restaurant closed."
We certainly were. We had a quiet Christmas Day on our own, as we did last year. Then we went to see Phil's parents on Boxing Day. My dad and Norma came on Wednesday and stayed overnight. We opened as usual on Thursday, and they had a good day looking round the shops and the gardens before they drove back. It was good to see them again.
"And what about Ian? Is he here helping out as usual?"
"Yes, he's a great help," replied Phil. "He's getting very proficient at his job. He came almost as soon as the college finished, and he'll go back the middle of next week." "Of course, we are not the only attraction," said Janice with a smile. "Sophie has been helping here as well, and they've spent most of their spare time together. They're out tonight with a group of Sophie's old school friends and their boyfriends."
"So, it's all on again with Sophie?" asked Val.
"Very much so," replied Janice. "They split up for a while. She had someone at college, and Ian was friendly with Alison, that girl from Blackpool that I told you about. But it didn't last very long. We didn't ask any questions. Ian's quite secretive about his private life, but I rather think she was too hot to handle. We like Sophie, don't we, Phil? They seem right together somehow."
"Yes, she's a nice lass," said Phil. "But I keep telling you, Janice, it's too soon for them to make up their minds. They're very young, and Sophie has another 1.5 years to do at college."
"And I keep telling you, Phil, that I was very sure when I met you that you were the one I wanted."
"And you finally caught me, didn't you?" Phil laughed. "Only joking, love. I was pretty sure as well about you. I would be pleased if Ian and Sophie stayed together, but we'll just have to wait and see."
"It was the same with Val and me," said Sam. "We knew, didn't we, love?"
Val nodded happily. "I was worried about what Sam's family would say, though, with me being just an office girl. But they finally accepted me, didn't they, Sam?"
"I should say so. Nobody knows better than I do what a tyrant my mother can be. But Val's got round her. She even offered to babysit tonight."
"Only when they're both tucked up in bed," added Val. "I can't imagine Beatrice changing a nappy."
"Beatrice, is that what you call her?"
asked Janice. "Good heavens, no, I wouldn't dare. I never knew what to call her, but I call her Gran now we've got the children."
"And how is Sissy?" asked Janice. "Have you seen her lately?"
"Yes, we called to see them just before Christmas, when we took the presents to everyone. She and Walter seemed very happy together after their little crisis.
Val had never been one to gossip, but she had told Janice about the reappearance of Jack Broadbent and the trauma it had caused Sissy.
Yes, I always thought she changed her mind very quickly about Walter, said Janice. I hadn't realised it had gone so far with that Jack fellow she met.
She didn't want to be the odd one out, said Val. I'd met Sam, and you'd met Phil, and then Jack came along, and I suppose Sissy just got carried away. She's rather insecure, you know. She was really upset at first about us moving here, and I know she'd love to be with us tonight.
Let's ring her then, said Janice, and wish them a happy new year. Do you think they'll be at home?
I should imagine so, said Val. It's worth a try, isn't it?
We'll have our supper first, said Janice. It's all ready. Then we'll give them a ring.
Val helped Janice to bring in the food from the kitchen. Fresh salmon sandwiches, vol au vents, one of Janice's specialities, and the inevitable Christmas cake. This was Janice's version, a lighter cake with glacé cherries, stem ginger, pineapple and golden syrup. A change from the usual darker fruit cake. They dined with plates on their knees around the fire, and after coffee and mince and another glass of sherry, it was 11:30.
We'll ring before midnight, said Janice. They may well have friends round, like we have.
The telephone was in the living room, and when Janice had dialed, it was Sissy who answered. The others could hear her cry of delight.
Janice, oh, how lovely to hear from you.
Val and Sam are with us. We wish you were here too.
Oh, so do I. We've got our parents here, Walter's and mine. Just imagine that.
Sissy lowered her voice.
Actually, it's all going well. The season of goodwill and all that. Walter and me were both only children, you know. So it's all up to us. Thanks for the prezzies. Holly loved her diamond tiara. And Paul's enjoying his new Enid Blyton book. He can read quite a bit on his own now. They'll both be sending you thank you letters. You said Val's there. Can I speak to her and all?
New Year greetings were exchanged all round, before the 6 of them promised to meet up early in 1962. They enjoyed a last drink, as the hands of the clock moved round to 12, and in the distance they could hear the ringing of church bells. After hugs and kisses and seasonal greetings, Val and Sam set off to walk the short distance home.
I expect Mother and Father will have gone to bed, said Sam. But I didn't want to be too late, just in case either of the children wake up.
They stopped by their gate and exchanged a loving kiss.
A new year in our new home, said Sam. Happy New Year, darling.
Chapter 24.
That was a really lovely meal, Valerie, said Beatrice on New Year's Day. Congratulations, my dear. I really believe that was the best meal you've ever cooked for us.
Thank you, said Val, pleased at her mother-in-law's remark, but smiling to herself at the slight sting in the tail. Had her previous efforts not come up to scratch?
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
They had had their dinner at midday, so that the children could take part as well. Val, too, was pleased at the way the pork had turned out, sweet and succulent, but crispy and nicely browned on the outside. And her pear and apple crumble had proved to be a winner. Now there was a mountain of washing up to do, but Sam persuaded her to leave it until later in the day, when they would tackle it together. Val knew that Beatrice would not offer to help, Neither would she expect her to. No meal was complete to Joshua without a cup of tea to follow. Then it was he who suggested that they take a walk to work off the excesses of a hearty meal.
"No, you're not staying behind to wash up," said Sam to Val. "I've told you, it will keep. It's a cold day, though, so you must wrap up warmly."
"I think Lucy would be better in the big pram," said Val, "rather than her pushchair. She can sit up and see what's going on."
"I won't come with you,"
said Beatrice, although no one had really thought that she would.
"I have a slight touch of indigestion."
"Oh, dear, I hope it wasn't the pork," said Val.
"No, of course it wasn't,"
said Beatrice.
"I've had this pain a few times lately, but a couple of Rennies usually takes it off." "I've told you to see the doctor," said Joshua. "I will if it gets any worse, but I keep telling you it's only indigestion." "All right, if you say so."
"I'm not too sure about Russell going out today," said Val. "He's got a real sniffle, and he keeps coughing."
"Don't pamper him, Val," said Sam. "He'll come to no harm. You want to come for a walk with us, don't you, Russell?"
Russell looked up from the hearthrug, where he was playing with the farm set he had been given for Christmas, sorting out the sheep, cows and pigs, horses and tiny ducks and hens, and arranging them in their various homes. There were barns and stables and pigsties, and stretches of green fields. It kept him happily occupied for hours on end.
"No, don't want to," he said briefly before turning back to his game.
Sam laughed.
"Well, that was straight from the horse's mouth. Perhaps it would be better to leave him, seeing that he's playing happily, and I suppose he is a little off colour, Val."
"Yes, I'll give him some junior aspirin later, with a drink of hot lemon and honey. But it's best to be occupied when you've got a cold. It takes your mind off it." Sam looked at Russell, and then at his mother.
"Mum," he began tentatively, "we think it would be better to leave Russell here, if it's all right with you. He won't be any trouble because he's engrossed with his farm. Is that okay? We won't be very long. But I agree with Dad that we all need some fresh air."
"Yes.
Yes, of course, that's all right,"
Beatrice answered a trifle unsurely, but she couldn't very well say no.
"You'll stay with Grandma, won't you, Russell, while Mummy and Daddy and Grandpa go for a walk?"
Her voice was a little strained, as she tried to speak cheerfully to her grandson. He glanced up and nodded.
"Yes, all right," he said,
then turned back to his animals.
"You'll be okay, will you, Mother?" said Sam. "Has your pain gone off?" "Yes, it's receding," said Beatrice. "I shall read the paper and Valerie's magazine and keep an eye on Russell."
They all departed a few moments later, when Lucy had been wrapped in her warm fleecy coat and bonnet, with a blanket to cover her legs.
"Bye-bye, Russell," she called, waving her hand. "Bye," he said, scarcely looking up.
"Now be a good boy for Grandma," said Val. He nodded.
"I'm a good boy now," he murmured to himself.
It seemed very quiet when they had all gone. Beatrice leaned back in the comfortable armchair, feeling glad of a bit of peace and quiet. She looked down at Russell, playing so contentedly with his farm. He really was a bonny little lad, with his mop of golden gingery hair and his chubby, rosy-cheeked face, although he did look a little peaky today. He didn't look like either Samuel or Valerie, but then it wasn't likely that he would. She recalled that she had been very much against the idea of his adoption, to her slight feeling of remorse now. She had never been able to take to him, as she had done to darling Rosemary and lovely little Lucy. He had been so very troublesome too, and she knew that Valerie had despaired of him at times. But now she found herself looking more fondly at him. He turned round as if aware of her glance, and smiled at her.
"Good boy, Russell," she said quietly.
She was still aware of the pain in the region of her chest and abdomen. Heartburn, she supposed. The pork that Valerie had cooked was delicious, but maybe a little rich. She rummaged in her bag and took a couple more rennies. She chewed them up, then kept very still. But it was getting worse, a real stabbing pain now that seemed to be travelling all around. She gave an involuntary gasp, and Russell looked up at her.
"What's the matter, Gran?" he said. "Have you got a pain?" "Yes, just a little one, dear," she said, "but it'll go soon."
But it didn't go away, and she cried out again, clutching at her stomach and rocking back and forth.
"Grandma, poorly,"
said Russell. He got up, went over to her, and touched her hand. She had her eyes closed now, but she had stopped making a noise. A sudden thought came into his head.
"Get the doctor,"
he said more to himself than to her.
"Ring 999.
He ran into the hall, where the big black telephone stood on a little table. He climbed up onto a chair at the side and lifted up the phone. It was heavier than the one at playgroup, but Mummy had shown him how to use it. He had rung his Gran's number, not this Gran though, the other one. Very carefully now, he put it to his ear. Then he put his finger into the hole where the number 9 was, and turned it round 3 times. He heard it ringing. Then a lady's voice said something he didn't understand. Then,
"Who is there?"
she asked.
"It's me, Russell James Walker," he said. "And my Gran's poorly. She's got a pain."
"Oh, I see. And where are you, Russell?" asked the lady.
"I'm at my house."
"And where is that? Do you know your address? Where you live?"
"Number 4, Sycamore Avenue, Harrogate," he replied.
Mummy had told him he must remember his address, in case he ever got lost.
"And are you on your own with Grandma?" "Yes, Mummy and Daddy and Grandpa and Lucy went for a walk. Then Grandma had a pain."
"Now don't worry, Russell. We'll send an ambulance as fast as we can. Will you be able to open the door?"
"Don't know."
"Well, I'm sure they'll get in somehow. How old are you, Russell?"
"I'm 3 and a bit."
"Well, you're a very clever little boy. What is Grandma doing now?"
"I think she's asleep. She's got her eyes closed. She's not crying now."
"Okay, Russell. Somebody will be there soon. Bye-bye, dear."
"Bye-bye, lady."
He went back to his Gran, who still had her eyes closed.
"Ambulance coming, Gran,"
he said. He touched her hand, but she didn't answer. He went over to the window, where he climbed onto the settee and looked out.
"Snowing,"
he said, as the first flakes began to fall from the leaden sky.
"I do believe it's snowing,"
said Sam, when they had walked along the stray almost to the town. "It's certainly been cold enough, but I thought it might keep off for a while. Do you want to turn back?"
"No, a bit of snow won't hurt us," said Joshua. "I want to see your window display before you change it."
But the snow was falling fast now, large feathery flakes that stuck to their clothing and were already starting to lie on the ground.
"I really think we should go back," said Val.
"OK, happen you're right," said Joshua. "Back to a nice warm house, eh?"
They retraced their steps, walking quickly, and Val pulled up the pram hood to protect Lucy.
"There's an ambulance in your avenue, Sam," said Joshua as they drew nearer. "I wonder who it is." Then, "Good God!" he exclaimed. "It's at your house! What's going on?"
They dashed up the path to see an ambulance man knocking at the door.
"We had a call," he said. "A little boy said his gran was poorly, but we can't get in. My mate's just gone round the back." "My God, Beatrice!"
said Joshua, as Sam quickly opened the door, and they all went inside. Russell rushed to meet them.
"Grandma, poorly," he said. "I rang 999, but I can't open the door."
Val hugged him. "Never mind, Russell. The men are here now. You're a very clever boy." Joshua hurried over to his wife. He knelt at her side and held her hand.
"Beatty," he said. "Come on, Beatty, speak to me."
"Just a minute, sir," said the ambulance man. He took hold of her wrist. "There's a pulse," he said as her eyelids started to flutter.
"Looks like a heart attack. Come on, Bill, let's get moving."
Beatrice was barely conscious as she was lifted onto a stretcher, an oxygen mask fitted on her face. Then the ambulance men carried her out.
"I'll go with her, of course," said Joshua, "and I'll let you know when there's any news. Say a little prayer for her, won't you? I don't know if it does any good, but we have to trust that he's listening."
"Grandma, poorly,"
said Russell, sounding a little frightened.
"She'll soon be better," said Joshua, giving the little boy a hug. "And what a clever boy you were, ringing for an ambulance." He ruffled his hair. "You're a grand little lad."
The ambulance drove away, and Val and Sam looked at one another. "What a shock," said Val. "Perhaps we shouldn't have gone and left her. She was complaining of her pain." Sam shook his head.
"I was sure it was indigestion, like she said. She's been having twinges for a while, but it always goes off. And Mother loves her food, you know. She certainly enjoyed the dinner you made."
"I hope it wasn't the pork that caused it."
"Not if it's a heart attack, and I rather think it is. We have our little boy to thank that they got here in time."
Russell was looking a little woebegone.
"Grandma get better?" he asked.
"Yes, of course she will," said Sam. "Now Mummy and I are going to do the washing up. It'll take our minds off it all," he said to Val. "You play with your farm set and we'll see if there's a nice programme for you to watch before you have your tea."
Russell rubbed his tummy.
"Full up," he said.
Val laughed. "Well, perhaps you'll be able to eat some ice cream. You deserve it for helping Grandma." Lucy was staring around wide-eyed, wondering what was going on. "And I'm sure Lucy's ready for a nap," said Val. "Come along, little lady. It's all very confusing, isn't it?" They did not speak much as they washed and put away the mountain of pots. Val could tell that Sam was very concerned. "Your mother's a strong lady," she said. "In every way, a strong personality."
"That we know only too well,"
said Sam with a wry smile. "That's true," agreed Val. "But she has a strong constitution as well. She's not always complaining of feeling ill, as some women do. I'm sure she'll be all right." Joshua rang from the hospital a few hours later.
"Your mother's fully conscious now," he said to Sam.
"Thank God," breathed Sam.
"Yes, it was a heart attack, but luckily only a minor one. That's what the pains were that she was having, but we never suspected that it was her heart. Anyway, she'll be okay as far as they can tell, but she'll have to stay in hospital for a day or two. There's just one problem, Sam. She's in Harrogate, not in Halifax, and they don't want to move her. Can you put me up? Or, I should say, put up with me for a day or two?
Of course we can, Dad, for as long as you like, although I hope for Mother's sake that it won't be too long. When are visiting hours?
2 till 4, then 6 till 8 in the evening. Don't come today, though, Sam. I don't want her to get too excited. But perhaps you could all go tomorrow afternoon. I know she's anxious to see Russell.
Yes, we'll be there, said Sam. Will you be coming back here tonight?
Yes, I'll stay for visiting hours. Then I'll get a taxi back. So I'll see you later. You've got a grand little family there, you know.
Val was relieved at the news. She hadn't realised she had become so fond of her mother-in-law.
Grandma's getting better, she told Russell, and we'll be going to see her tomorrow.
It had been an exhausting day, and it was an early bedtime for all of them when Joshua had returned from the hospital. Fortunately, the store was closed the following day. Sam and Colin had agreed to have a 2-day break before the New Year's sales commenced. They had a quick lunch, then set off in Sam's car for the hospital.
What shall we take for Grandma?
Val had asked Joshua.
Nothing, he replied. Just ourselves. She has everything she needs, and she's in very good hands.
We must take her nightdress, though, and her slippers and dressing gown, said Val. She was taken off in a hurry, and I know she won't like those awful hospital gowns. And there's that bed jacket we bought for her at Christmas. That's turned out to be a useful present, hasn't it?
Beatrice was sitting up in bed, propped up by 2 pillows. She was in a private room. Joshua had known that this was what she would prefer, and had made the necessary arrangements. Understandably, she looked a little pale, and her eyes looked tired, but Val had never seen her smile so radiantly or sincerely. They all kissed her, and she said how pleased she was to see them. But it was Russell she really wanted to see.
"Where's my grand little boy?"
she said, as he stood back rather unsurely. He was aware that this grandma was not always as friendly towards him as his other gran was. He went and stood closer to her.
"Are you better now, Grandma?" he asked. "Much better, dear," she said, "and that's because you were such a clever boy, phoning for an ambulance."
Val lifted him up and sat him on the bed. Then Beatrice hugged him and kissed his cheek. Everybody kept saying he was a clever boy. He had remembered what they did at playgroup when they were playing at doctors. Only this time it was a real doctor and ambulance, not a pretend one.
"We are all very proud of you," said his gran, "and somebody is coming to take your photograph. I've told the nurses all about you."
Val and Sam looked surprised. Then Joshua said,
"Yes, that's right. I didn't tell you last night because it wasn't certain then. There's someone coming from the local newspaper. The doctor and nurses thought it was such a lovely story about a little boy saving his grandma's life." "She wouldn't have died," he added quietly. "At least, we hope not, but they'll make a good story of it, you can be sure." In a few moments, sure enough, a photographer and a reporter came. First of all, a photo was taken of Beatrice and Russell, her arm around him as she looked at him affectionately. Then a photo of the whole family, the 6 of them grouped closely around the bed. Val had made sure that Beatrice was wearing her new fleecy bed jacket to cover the austere hospital nightdress.
The story made headlines in the local paper the following day. "Little boy saves grandma's life." Russell was thrilled to see his photo, and Lucy's as well, and all of them. But he wasn't sure what all the fuss was about. It was just something they had been told about at playgroup, and he had remembered what to do. The story told how 3-year-old Russell Walker had had the presence of mind to dial 999 when his grandma became ill. There was some family information as well, that Joshua, Beatrice's husband, was the owner of Walker's Mill in Halifax, and their son Samuel was co-owner of a sports shop in Harrogate.
"We are very proud of our little Russell," said Beatrice in the report. "He's a clever boy and a great blessing to our family. He's a little champion."
"What a lovely thing," your mother said, "about Russell being a blessing to all our family," Val commented, as she and Sam reread the report in the newspaper later that evening. The children were in bed, and Joshua was visiting his wife again. Val's eyes were moist with tears. She didn't always think like that, did she?
"No, she certainly didn't," agreed Sam. "She thought we were making a big mistake in adopting him. But it was our decision, and there was no way she was going to dissuade us."
"No," said Val, "but I must admit that I wondered at first if we might have been too hasty. Russell was such a difficult child, so naughty and disobedient, and, I don't like saying this, but I sometimes felt that I couldn't love him the way that I knew I should. And I wondered if it might have been different if I'd actually given birth to him. There had never been that bonding, you know, that you get with your own child. I felt that with Lucy straight away."
"Yes, and I know it was more difficult with Russell when Lucy arrived, and so unexpectedly too," said Sam. "But she was a different kettle of fish right from the start, wasn't she? Such a good little child. I'm not surprised you felt that way about Russell. But don't feel guilty about it now, darling. I had my moments too of wondering if we'd done the right thing. But he's turned out to be a grand little lad. You don't have any doubts now, do you?"
"No, of course not. I can't imagine life without our Russell. As your mother says, he's a little champion." You have been listening to Pastures New. It was written by Margaret Thornton and read by Maggie Mash. This has been a Magna Story Sound presentation. If you have enjoyed this production, please write to us at Magna Story Sound, Cawood House, Asquith Industrial Estate, Gargrave, Skipton, North Yorkshire, BD23 3SE. Or call 01756 748 277, and you will be sent a full list of our recordings.